If everything they'd encountered so far could be traced back to memory, to myth, or to reason, then the gate before them shattered that illusion. Magic, spirits of the dead, and intricate craftsmanship were all part of this world's lore, long woven into its fabric. But this doesn't belong to this world, Gandalf murmured, standing before the infernal gateway, an enormous, ominous arch pulsing with a deep crimson glow. The gate of hell. He stared at it for a long time, thoughts heavy behind his eyes. And yet it exists. That means the world has acknowledged it. A new verse in the music of creation, perhaps. He gave a faint sigh. It's a pity I may not live to see how this song ends. There's not much to see, Levi replied flatly. Just magma, scorched stone, ruined relics, and the remnants of what crawled out of them. But beneath Levi's pragmatic tone lay a deeper truth. Hell itself might be the colossal corpse of an ancient being, its bones now the foundation of a forgotten civilization's ruins. It reminds me of Moria, Gandalf said wistfully. Then he shook his head, marveling once more. To think all of this is managed by you alone. Before arriving, I expected a kingdom of citizens, not puppets. As if on cue, a lumbering iron automaton approached, peered curiously at the new guest, and then scratched its metallic head before presenting a small red flower. Oh, Gandalf blinked, gently taking the gift. Thank you. With a heavy clank, the puppet turned and returned to its patrol. Even the machines are courteous, Gandalf mused. I do what I can, Levi said quietly. If someone seeks refuge here, I won't turn them away. A silence settled. Then Gandalf, unlike the hurried Felodin, accepted Levi's offer to stay a few days without hesitation, claiming a guest room and offering conversation, wisdom, and questions in return. Levi found the wizard's company surprisingly easy. Gandalf's depth rivaled Elrond's, but his casual demeanor made him far more approachable. Days passed quickly. One morning, Gandalf approached with a farewell smile. Thank you for your hospitality, Levi, but my path calls me forward. May the road ahead rise to meet you. It's been a memorable visit, especially your cooking. I almost stayed longer for that alone. Huh, a hobbit once said the same. With your cooking, no hobbit would ever let you leave. Gandalf chuckled and accepted a pouch of provisions. Well then, time for more adventures. Adventure? Levi echoed. Yes, Gandalf said, eyes twinkling. Unless, of course, someone wants to come along. A short time later, Levi sat atop a magnificent, diamond-armored steed, clad head to toe in sleek black netherite armor, the sunlight gleaming off his plate like obsidian. Where to? He asked. Gandalf took a long look at him, sighing. Levi, we're going on an adventure. Not to war. The wizard pointed at the horse. Maybe lose the charger. And the armor will draw too much attention like this. Levi looked down at himself, then at Gandalf's plain gray robe. After a moment of inner conflict, he sighed and complied. Off came the helmet, stowed in his pack. A rough, earth-colored cloak draped over his armor. Hood up, he looked almost like a wandering sage. Underneath, though, the dark alloy shimmered subtly. Despite appearances, Levi moved without burden. His armor didn't weigh him down in the slightest. Good enough? He asked. Gandalf nodded. You'll pass, if they don't stare too hard. To be honest, Gandalf added, you look more like a wandering knight than a ranger. Close enough. Then let's go. Gandalf gestured toward the east. Levi followed his gaze. The misty mountains? Yes. Orc activity has increased alarmingly. They're getting bold, pushing into nearby valleys. Something's stirring, and I need to know what. Levi frowned. That may have something to do with me. He paused, then admitted, not long ago, they sent hundreds of wolf riders to attack me. Most didn't survive. No wonder it's been quiet, he added. They haven't dared return since. Gandalf stared. What exactly did you do to provoke such hatred? Levi casually opened his reputation panel. Misty Mountain Orcs, minus 370, dead enemy. I just told you, I killed hundreds of their riders. Gandalf raised his brows. Well, that explains some of it. But it's not just the West. Scouts report renewed activity in the east too. Old fortresses from the Dwarf Orc Wars are being reoccupied. Something's happening. I just don't know what. Levi nodded slowly. Then it's worth looking into. He glanced down the winding path ahead, the mountains looming in the distance. So began another adventure, this time not alone. For both Levi and Gandalf, the road was nothing unfamiliar. Adventure was a familiar rhythm in their lives. Levi, having only recently returned from Hell, found Middle-earth's chill air and gentle winds almost relaxing in comparison. Gone was the ever-present stench of sulfur, the blistering heat of molten stone. While the infernal climate had never truly harmed him, it didn't mean he enjoyed it. A world that didn't smell like burning brimstone was a welcome change. "Which route are we taking?" Levi asked as they approached the misty mountains. "There are two ways across," he mused aloud. "One straight through the pass. The other circles far north through Isengard." "High Pass," Gandalf replied without hesitation. Levi frowned slightly. "Dangerous choice. That's Orc territory, isn't it?" "Indeed. But there are two paths through the High Pass. We'll take the upper route, stay away from the Orc dens." Levi didn't argue. He could cut through an Orc stronghold if needed. His current gear could rival a warband. After all, he hadn't left Hell empty-handed. The Piglin fortress alone had made him rich in golden apples, gear, and enchanted relics. As long as Gandalf was safe, the rest would take care of itself. Still, the High Pass held more than just orcs. Deep beneath its caverns, in the shadows of ancient stone, lurked a creature that once bore the name Smeagol. A glint of gold flickered faintly in Levi's eye. They traveled quickly. Though without horses, their pace was unrelenting, breaking only briefly for meals. Levi didn't require rest, and surprisingly, Gandalf kept pace with ease. After realizing Levi never stopped, the old wizard quietly dropped any mention of rest altogether. They crossed wild plains and winding trails until one clear morning, they finally reached the foothills of the Misty Mountains. Towering snow-capped peaks rose before them like a jagged wall splitting the sky. "Zhongzhou's crown," Levi murmured, gazing at the peaks. "The Misty Mountains. No time to dawdle," Gandalf called from ahead. "We need to cross while there's still light. Orcs grow bold after dark." Without delay, they began their ascent, not even pausing for meals. But caution alone wasn't enough to avoid trouble. A low growl echoed through the cliffs. Gandalf immediately lifted his staff. Levi drew his sword, its ancient elven blade glowing faintly with power. No attack came. They exchanged a glance, then crept forward. Behind a rocky outcrop, they spotted the source. 5 orcs and 2 wargs squabbling over the carcass of a dead beast. "I found it first," one snarled. "You say you found it," another snapped. "Why can't it be mine?" "Roar!" The wargs growled, asserting their claim. "Interesting," Gandalf whispered. "Dispute over the kill. The wargs believe their size earns them the lion's share. The orcs claim the right of discovery." "Wargs arguing with orcs? That's rare," Levi observed. "They're not simple beasts," Gandalf replied. "They're intelligent, cunning. Partners to the orcs, not slaves. And not easily tamed, unless you walk a darker path." "Noted," Levi said. His tone was dry, but they both knew his power didn't come from malice. Suddenly, one of the wargs twitched its nose, sniffing the air. Its head rose, ears alert. "I think we should leave," Gandalf whispered. Levi smiled slightly. "I think we should prepare." The warg lunged toward their hiding spot. Levi didn't flinch. He leapt down, blade already drawn. The moment the sword struck, fire erupted across the warg's fur. It collapsed mid-leap, consumed by flames and screams. Gandalf narrowed his eyes at the weapon. The ancient elven blade shimmered with residual fire. The orcs, seeing only a single figure step from the shadows, readied to charge, until Levi's cloak slipped, revealing his blackened armor and blazing sword. They hesitated. Then they ran, howling for reinforcements as the second warg bolted into the distance. "They won't be back anytime soon," Levi said, sheathing his sword. Gandalf chuckled. "Maybe this trip will be easier than I thought." "Don't get lazy," Levi replied, already moving. Dusk fell fast. By the time they began descending the other side of the pass, snow at their backs, the sun had nearly vanished. Thunk! An arrow clanged off Levi's chest plate and fell harmlessly to the ground. He turned. Gandalf did too. A swarm of orcs filled the narrow path behind them, shouting, brandishing weapons, loosing arrows. "Run!" Gandalf shouted, ducking a thrown scimitar. But Levi stood his ground. "No," he growled. "Not this time." He pulled on his helmet, drew his sword, and turned toward the enemy. With a burst of speed, he charged the narrow path. Bang! The first orc was cleaved in two. The impact knocked others off balance. Bones snapped, weapons flew. Bang! Another sweeping strike hurled several orcs into the air, their bodies ablaze as they crashed into their comrades. The orcs surged like a tide, but Levi stood firm, a wall of black steel and fire. His armor absorbed the blows. His blades scattered them like dry leaves. Orc weapons shattered against the netherite. Fire spread through their ranks. A few broke through, hammering his armor with clubs and axes. His health bar ticked down briefly, then shot back up as a golden apple's magic pulsed through him. Their blades broke. Their morale followed. Soon, the snow was littered with scorched corpses. The smell of blood faded, replaced by the stench of burned flesh. The fear the orcs, so often spread, began to creep into their own hearts. Then came the scream. "It's him, the wild wizard." A sharp-eyed survivor recognized Levi from a past massacre. The name spread like wildfire. Panic erupted. Even the wargs whimpered and backed away, staring at the armored figure with dread. Levi stepped forward. "Come on, scum," he growled. "Try to pass me." Gandalf, watching from a short distance, felt a strange déjà vu. He had once seen another dark figure descend a mountain, scattering armies, Sauron himself, towering in wrath. And now here stood Levi, one man halting an entire horde. He wasn't sure who would win if they ever met. But for now, Levi had won, and the mountain path was theirs.
Hey, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy our audiobooks, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, feel free to share your review in the comments section below.
Buzz. Directly below, deep in the ground, a ring trembled. "My baby." A dirty hand rubbed it, holding it tightly. The more powerful a person is, the easier it is to be blinded by power and be deceived, but they will not end well in the end, because there is only one true owner of that thing from beginning to end. Isildur, who had received the ring, was bewitched in front of the volcano and eventually died in the Golden Iris swamp south of here, and the ring was lost there, or flowed into the sea. At the foot of the mountain, Gandalf walked in front, talking about the major historical events that had happened in this area. Levi walked behind and listened silently, nodding from time to time. "You said that if you had kicked him down at the crater, wouldn't things have happened as bad as they did later?" Gandalf glanced at him. "All destiny has its inevitable order. Levi, the possibility you mention will never happen, even if the scene is repeated 100 or 1,000 times. The relationship is too complicated." "Okay, I take your word for it." The two of them walked and talked all the way, discussing some things every now and then quite leisurely. It was as if the battle he had just experienced was just an illusion. Of course, Levi couldn't keep fighting with the Oaks. After blocking the door at the beginning, he fought and retreated all the way. Maybe the group of Oaks were really afraid of being killed, or maybe it was because the battle was too sudden. The pursuit of the Oaks seemed quite weak, and the two of them ran out of the mountains in a short while. But then again, Gandalf had a very strange feeling. The man behind him, let's say he doesn't understand history. He does know a lot of secrets that are ancient and almost unknown to anyone. But if you say he understands history, it's not necessarily true. The reason is that if you ask him some details, ordinary people may understand them. Common sense, he would answer, "I don't know." Very contradictory. Shadash. On a plain far away from the Misty Mountains, Gandalf suddenly stopped and signaled Levi to be quiet. "OC, roar." Accompanied by the low roar of the wargs, a group of orc riders crossed the border and rushed in one direction. "I guess there's an orc stronghold," or at least a camp, over there. Gandalf exposed half of his head and looked at the backs of the group of oaks. Then what do we do? Get rid of them? Oh, no, that's too risky. After all, there are only two of us. Looking at Levi with a relaxed look on his face, Gandalf's voice suddenly stopped. It seems like it's not impossible. I think we'd better go investigate first. After all, we don't know how many people there are on the other side. Agree. Although Levi looked relaxed, he actually had some idea in mind. After all, it would be very difficult to deal with the Oak Army if he accidentally stabbed him. Quantitative changes lead to qualitative changes. When the quantity reaches a certain level, even he will be weak. Let's go. Following the marching path of the oaks, the two of them, using the cover of their robes, soon came to a fortress that seemed a little noisy. But this is not so much a fortress as a temporary camp built from the ruins of the fortress. In the camp, there is a relatively stronger 20 health mini-boss, Oak, leading these guys. At this moment, a large group of oaks were resting in this dark and humid camp. Occasionally, a few shouts and curses could be heard. That was when some oaks started fighting. There are a dozen wargs and more than 20 orcs. Soon Gandalf counted the enemy's forces. Look, he pointed at two oaks fighting in the distance and said, "The word unity never appears to oaks. They can always fight among themselves because of trivial matters. I think we can do some small guidance and let them fight on their own for a while." Gandalf picked up a small stone, blew it, and threw it into a dozing orc. "Who is it?" Oak next to him was so frightened by the roar that he sat up and immediately became a little angry. "Why are you making such a noise? Did you hit me? So what if I hit you?" Snap! The oak, who was woken up, threw a handful of stones, smashing the eyes of the oak opposite him so hard that he couldn't open his eyes. Scum! Oak was angry after being hit and rushed forward with a roar. The two orcs soon struggled with each other. This kind of thing can only be regarded as normal in the oak camp, and it did not attract much attention. Even the surrounding oaks looked like they were watching a good show. If there is a dispute, there must be an end. Soon, one of them fell to the ground with a bruised face and groaned. It was obvious that he couldn't move for a while. Bah! Of course the other one would not forget to humiliate him. Looking again, Gandalf next to him had a wicked smile on his face. It was obvious that this was not the first time he had done this. I often use this method to get them to stir up trouble on their own, which allows them to reduce their power without even realizing it. A very smart move. Thanks. Just as Gandalf was aiming at his second target, preparing to artificially cause internal strife again, Levi stood up directly from their hiding place. Gandalf paused and looked up at him. "But it's too much trouble. I think it will be faster just to go." Swish! The long sword was drawn out, shining with blue light. "There are enemies." Roar! With a warning, the orcs immediately rode on their wargs, and those who did not ride on wargs picked up their weapons and followed behind. Alas! Too reckless. Knowing that he could no longer hide, Gandalf immediately stood up and picked up his staff. "Ah, look what I found, a human with a disgusting sword, and a wizard. Who gave you the courage to come to my territory? Kill them." The little leader raised his butcher knife, and the wargs behind him immediately pounced on him. Boom! Levi swept across and directly stopped the three riders. The flames ignited from the dry fur of the wargs, burning the orcs riding on them and screaming, and they immediately turned over and jumped down. Gandalf, behind him, glanced at the fire and saw that the flames that were almost extinguished by the rolling suddenly jumped up, and the momentum was so great that it directly ignited the orcs who were closer. Levi did not turn his head to look. He knew that Gandalf held a ring of fire, which could ignite both fire and hope. On this side, Levi swept a large area, wearing black armor, and rushed into the group of orcs to kill them indiscriminately, leaving a pile of charred corpses on the ground, which made the orcs behind tremble with fear. If I can't afford to provoke them, can I not hide? In comparison, the old man over there looked much easier to bully. An orc screamed and raised the weapon in his hand and rushed towards Gandalf, but Gandalf was not in a hurry. He raised his staff and poked it. Based on the principle that an inch longer is an inch stronger, he relied on the length of the staff to knock the attacking orc to the ground. After this poke, He turned around and hit another orc with a stick. The staff swung in the wind and hit another orc. This time, the orc's not-so-strong armor was bent directly, which surprised Gandalf himself. This thing is getting more and more convenient to use. Although Gandalf also fought with great momentum, he was far inferior to Levi. 5 or 6 orcs soon gathered around him, obviously considering him as a weak point and planning to take the weak ones as hostages first. However, Gandalf knocked his staff on the ground, and a terrifying flash suddenly passed over the camp. With a smell of gunpowder, several orcs fell to the ground and died on the spot. Levi, wait a minute. On this side, Levi killed dozens of orcs and more than a dozen wargs, leaving only one small leader. Gandalf hurried over and looked at the last survivor. I thought you had forgotten our purpose. Don't worry, I can control my sword. Levi took back his sword, and at the same time Gandalf put his cane against the chest of the small orc leader to prevent him from getting up and fighting back. The so-called purpose of the two was naturally to explore the intelligence of these orcs. Dirty guy, tell me, what are you doing here? Hee, damn wizard. We will skin you sooner or later. Boom. Gandalf hit him hard and beat the orc to a bloody skin. Tell me your purpose. I will give you a quick death. We will kill all the humans in this area, and everything will belong to us. Ga. After saying this, the small leader died directly. Levi looked at Gandalf. Are there still people living around here? Gandalf nodded slowly, frowned, and said, As far as I know, there are some. Many years ago, when evil had not yet spread, the kingdom of Rovanion had not yet become a ruin, and the Mirkwood was still called the Great Greenwood. There were many free people living near this fertile river valley. However, now the forest has been polluted, is pitch black inside, and there are many dangers nearby. It is no longer suitable for living. Most people choose to move to a safer place to live. There are indeed many people living here, both humans and hobbits. Some of them have left here, some are still wandering, and some have not had time to leave and are still gathering in this area. We have to do something, Levi. Gandalf picked up his cane, gave the little leader a slap to prevent him from pretending to be dead, and called Levi to set off. Where are you going? It's not me who's going, it's us. We should go and warn the possible residents nearby, and tell them to leave as soon as possible to avoid being killed by the orcs. No, Gandalf. I think it's enough for you to do this. Levi stood there without moving. Gandalf turned around. What about you? I'll kill all the orcs. Won't that solve the problem? Levi felt that there were too many orcs nearby. Hearing this, Gandalf stopped temporarily. If someone else said this, the wizard would definitely hit him hard on the head with his pipe to wake him up. Since the orcs are preparing for a large-scale looting, they will not only send a few scattered teams, but will definitely send a total of at least thousands of looting troops. A person facing thousands of orcs alone is a death sentence, no matter how you look at it. Generally speaking, this is the case. But if it was Levi, as long as those orcs didn't gather together all the time, maybe... Gandalf nodded and said, That makes sense. Then we will separate here, and you should be careful in your actions. I will go to support you as soon as I finish my work here. May your actions go smoothly. You too. The Anduin Valley, located on the east side of the Misty Mountains, the two separated and ran in different directions. Levi opened the system map, and this area was full of fog that had not been explored yet. Just right. Let me open the map carefully. Boom. Night. An orc holding a torch kicked over a fence and set fire to the wooden houses along the road. Under the light of the fire, the face full of lumps looked extremely hideous and terrifying. Bad luck. Another abandoned village. Where's the scout? Tell him to come over. Didn't they say there are people here? A shorter orc came over, bending over, and said timidly, I did see a fire here just now. Maybe they are hiding. As he was talking, another orc came over to report the news, and it seemed that he had found something at the entrance of the village. The little leader immediately led people over. The ashes just burned are still warm. There must be someone nearby. Find him. Just as a circle of orcs were about to disperse and search separately, the wargs suddenly sounded a warning and roared towards the shadows. The little leader looked over and saw a human in an inconspicuous linen robe slowly emerging from the darkness. "Ah, I found it!" The wargs rushed over excitedly, and the orc raised his butcher knife, already thinking about how to kill this unfortunate human. However, a faint blue light flashed, and the human slowly smiled. "Wait, this person not right." The little leader stopped the wolf from charging forward and took 2 steps back. A moment later, looking at the burning corpses of orcs and wolves in front of him and the direction where the little orc leader ran away, Levi felt a little bit sorry. This time he didn't ride a horse, and he really couldn't catch up with the wolf. Very smart. He knew to run away when he saw me. Without caring where the orc ran, Levi continued his own pace, opening the map little by little, looking for abandoned villages or lone orc teams. Under the carpet-style search, one quiet or noisy day after another passed unknowingly. "Leader, we saw fireworks in a village over there. Do you want to go in and search?" When they heard that there might be people in the village, the surrounding wargs and orcs began to get agitated and could not wait any longer. At the end of the team, someone could not help but let out a sigh, with numbness in his eyes. Is someone else going to be enslaved? Obviously, even if Gandalf's warning was timely and Levi killed many people, there were still many people caught by the orcs in the large-scale looting, either as food or as slaves. This was an orc team responsible for escorting the looted human slaves. Compared with other looting teams, they were more numerous, more powerful, and more vicious. Although he was confident in his own strength, the leader still asked vigilantly after listening to the scout's report. "Fireworks? Just one or many?" "Many, more than one house." "Are those houses old or new? Are there any signs of human activities?" The scout scratched his swollen head and recalled with great effort. "Some houses are very old, but it seems that someone has cleaned them. I also saw a few clothes drying in the yard." "Are there many weeds on the roadside?" The scout shook his head. "No, there are very few weeds. I can see the situation inside at a glance." "Good." The leader showed a cruel smile. "It seems that this is not the trap of that person, but a real village." He pointed to a team of only dozens of orcs and ordered, "You watch these slaves here, and the others follow me. We will eat human flesh tonight." "Ha ha ha." A group of orcs rushed to the village. However, after entering the houses in the village and searching for a while, they were dumbfounded. "Why is there no one?" An orc looked at the bonfires burning in some chimneys and the leather clothes hanging on the wooden racks in the yard, wondering what was going on. Until suddenly, there was a commotion from the slave-guarding team in the distance. Orcs and wargs with flames flew into the sky and fell to the ground screaming. Under the night sky, "It's him! It must be him! That human! Damn it, I got tricked again!" The little leader became so angry that he immediately raised the machete in his hand and shouted in the direction of Levi. "We!" The large group of wargs and oaks behind them looked fierce, just waiting for the leader's order to rush back and chop the human into pieces. "Let's withdraw." The leader turned around and was about to run away, but the oaks around him were stunned, and when they reacted, their eyes were filled with dissatisfaction. "Just a human being and still running? There are hundreds of us. You don't deserve to be our leader, you coward." Immediately, a stronger oak stood up to object. "Shut your mouth, scum. If you want to die, I can make it happen for you." The little leader grabbed the objecting oak and lifted him up with his strong arms. He clamped his neck tightly with one hand, strangling him so that he could neither break away nor breathe. He was about to struggle and couldn't move at the sight of him. Asphyxia. Thump. In the end, the leader did not kill him. The objectionable oak was thrown to the ground and gasped for breath. With the example, other oaks suddenly became honest, at least on the surface they no longer objected. "You have no idea how terrifying he is. Go find reinforcements. We need more manpower to deal with him." Even though there were many dissatisfactions, a large group of oaks just retreated. Other side, the firelight reflected the desolate faces of the refugees. Looking at the black-armored warrior who seemed to fall from the sky, the refugees couldn't tell for a while whether they were dreaming or still awake. Likewise, It was impossible to tell whether this brutal warrior was an enemy or a friend. There were not many oaks left to guard the refugees, but dozens of oaks whose equipment was not very good. They were quickly cleaned up by Levi. They died and escaped, and no one was left. This, sir, an old farmer walked up to the front and spoke to Levi bravely. After exhausting his life's experience, he followed the example of those with status and bowed. Levi took off his helmet and gently helped the old man up. Seeing that this brave warrior seemed to have no hostility and was very friendly, the refugees all breathed a sigh of relief. "Are you residents here?" "Yes, sir. We have lived here for generations," the old man replied. Levi kicked the oak corpse on the ground twice and said, "This place doesn't look suitable for long-term living." The old man didn't know what to say for a moment. In fact, he had no idea what happened. "I only know that it was okay to live here before, but suddenly the place where I lived was destroyed by a group of oaks. Some people were killed, some were eaten alive, and the rest were captured here. Don't live here anymore." Levi shook his head. "It could get very dangerous here very quickly." "But, sir, our home has been destroyed. We have nothing on us, and we have nowhere to go. The things here are all we have." Levi looked at the group of refugees in front of him and was silent for a while. "Go south, follow the river, and you can go all the way to Rohan. Further south from Rohan is Gondor. These are human kingdoms that can protect your survival. Even if you don't want to go south, you can go east, all the way to the east of the Black Forest, to the River Valley State, and you can find a place where you can live." However, considering various factors, after a slight hesitation, Levi added, "If you're really desperate, you can also choose to cross the mountains to the west and walk through the wilderness. There's a territory there." "We remember, my lord." There was not much communication. The refugees asked Levi's name, and after solemnly expressing their gratitude, they planned to start their long journey. However, when Levi looked at these disgraced and dispossessed people, he shook his head and called them to stop. "Take these. It will make your journey smoother." Levi took out a lot of bread and distributed it. He also made some iron swords on the spot and gave them to the young people who seemed to be kinder and more capable of fighting among the refugees. Although I don't know how effective it will be, at least it will prevent them from enduring hunger on the road and will not be helpless when encountering danger. These supplies are just a drop in the bucket to Levi, but they are quite precious and useful to the refugees. After the refugees left, the reputation system also showed prompts. As these refugees find new places to live, Levi's reputation will continue to spread among the relevant camps and regions. The more people you save, the more reputation you gain. It's an unexpected bonus. Other side, where the plundering footsteps have not yet reached. A gray figure was arguing with some people. "But we have always lived here, and we have never heard of any orc army." "That's because they were once eliminated by the dwarf army, and now they are back, and they are nearby. If you don't want to lose your lives, then call the people in the village as soon as possible. Pack your things and leave now. There's still time." Just when everyone was a little shaken, a man with an unshaven face and a slovenly face squeezed over and retorted harshly, "No, we won't leave. You, a wizard who only brings rumors and rumors, less it's definitely not a good idea to leave. I see you've been eyeing our village for a long time, just waiting to drive us out. Okay." Bang! Gandalf frowned and hit the nagging guy with a stick, knocking him to the ground. "I say again, leave here quickly, otherwise it will be too late." Gandalf spoke loudly. His words seemed to have some kind of magic, and the villagers unconsciously felt convinced. But the land that supports our lives is right under our feet. Even if we leave, where should we go? Even so, some people still raise questions. There are more places where people can live than here. Gandalf looked at the villagers and pointed in a direction. To the north, there are some larger gathering places not far north of the river, where more people live. Your ancestors are of the same origin. If you gather together, you will definitely be able to exert greater power. Compared with Levi, Gandalf obviously knows more about the local situation and history. He knows that there are some human gathering places in the north of the valley, which are not as far away as Rohan or Dale. The people there have some weapons and can deal with a certain number of enemies. Although there are not many free people living in this area strictly speaking, if they can unite and form a whole, they can form a strong resistance force and effectively resist the invasion of orcs. In this way, they don't have to rely on others or wander around, but can continue to live in this area and be self-reliant. Soon, the villagers gathered together with their things and discussed which way to go. Gandalf lit his pipe and took 2 puffs. Of course, it was not only the pipe in his hand that was lit. There was also a certain hope in people's hearts. Discover, guide, and unite. This is exactly what wizards have always been responsible for. On the swamp, Levi stretched out another small stronghold and patted the tattered linen cloak that was stained with blood. As the sword edge passed through the throat of the oak at his feet, the blue light above gradually extinguished. Boom! The fire ignited on the corpse dispelled some of the fog in the morning. Levi stretched out his hand to bake it and felt a touch of warmth. It's getting colder. A long time has passed since he separated from Gandalf. At first, Levi would still count the rising and setting of the sun, what time it was, and how many days had passed. But as the fog on the map gradually dissipated, the distance traveled by his feet became longer and longer, and more orcs were chopped down by the sword in his hand. Levi gradually felt a little numb. Every day, I was either rushing to open a map or searching for traces of oaks and refugees. Day after day, there was no change. I vaguely remember meeting scattered refugees a month ago, talking to them a few words and guiding them to safe places. But maybe it's because the residents in this area have finally evacuated, or maybe for some other reason, Levi hasn't seen a human being for a long time. Even animals are rare. It seems that apart from the orcs, the only ones that move and make noises around here are wargs. Of course, they won't move now. After sitting there in a daze for a while, Levi took out 2 pieces of bread and ate them. Then he opened the map and looked at the topography of the area. At this moment, most of the fog in the area known as the Anduin Valley has been dispersed, and the terrain is recorded on the map. Among them, there are batches of oak stationed there, and all those who could be killed have been killed by Levi. Those who were not killed either ran too fast, or hundreds of orcs gathered together in a pile. In a relatively open area, an army of this size cannot be dealt with by Levi for the time being. When there are too many, it will always happen in tactics. Some changes make it difficult to get out once you are trapped. Levi shook his head. The rest of the orc army is basically a hard nut that they have forced to unite, and they are not easy to chew. It's time to stop for now. After being out for so long, even Levi would have some difficulties in stocking up on supplies. The ready-made food had been consumed long ago, and for a long time, Levi relied on several groups of hay blocks stored in his backpack to make bread. The bread is almost gone now. Levi stood up and was about to walk around to see if he could find any wild animals when a familiar voice suddenly came from the distance. "Finally found you, Levi. Phew. It's not easy." I saw an old man in gray robe crossing the grass all the way, avoiding the swamp, and quickly ran to Levi. "I've been looking for you for almost half a month. If I hadn't still seen some burned corpses of orcs and wargs, I would have suspected that you had gone back. The oaks in this area haven't been cleaned up yet. How could I go back so early?" Levi shook his head. "Hiss." Hearing this, Gandalf took a breath and said quickly, "Oh my God, Levi, that's enough. You've done enough. I've been here for half a month, and I haven't even seen half a living oak. I can't even see it. To be honest, this is cleaner than the dwarf army. I wonder if you have any deep grudge against these oaks." "A deep hatred?" Levi glanced at the reputation column. "Misty Mountain Orcs, minus 1,523, old enemy. It should be there now." At this point, Levi estimates that the oaks in this area hate him no less than the dwarf royal family. To give a specific example, if Levi and Thorin are chased by oaks and they run away separately, the oaks might have to chase Levi first, assuming they can beat them. Well, no matter what, our goal has been achieved. The humans in the valley have moved north and gathered. When they're truly united, the invasion of orcs will no longer threaten them. Maybe they can coalesce into a new group. Without your help, I'm afraid they would have experienced more setbacks." As Gandalf spoke, he found a piece of broken wood and sat on it, took out his cigarette, and lit a fire. As a smoke ring blew out, the wizard's tense expression relaxed a lot. Gandalf just smoked, and Levi didn't say anything, as if he was in a daze. There was silence over the swamp, except for a thin line of smoke floating lonely. Gandalf glanced at the silent Levi, thoughtfully. After a while, maybe it was time to rest. He put away his pipe and suddenly slapped his knee. "Oh, look at my mind, I almost forgot." "What?" "New Year. New Year." Leeway was a little confused. "What does it mean? Is there anything special about the New Year?" "Yes, the New Year is coming soon. I once told the children of Shire that I would bring fireworks when the New Year comes. Has it been so long?" Levi felt a little dazed. This trip was definitely the longest he had ever been out, longer than going to hell. "It's time for us to end this trip, Levi." Gandalf patted Levi on the shoulder, announcing the end of the adventure. A cool breeze blew through. There were small white particles floating on Levi's face, ice cold and a little moist. "It's snowing. The orcs have temporarily stopped moving. For some reason, they have shrunk near the mountains and stopped expanding outward." As they walked along, Gandalf talked about the information he had learned. When he mentioned some reasons, he glanced at Levi. "To be honest, this is one of the few times when I feel that things are going well. All the adventures in the past were always full of obstacles. There are still too few things a person can do. Not everyone can be as strong as Levi." "Levi," Gandalf suddenly called out. I'm here. I always feel like you're in a daze." "No, I just feel a little tired." "No, you should understand. I won't feel tired." "I think you're tired." Gandalf looked like an experienced person and said slowly, "Do you know, Levi, the elves have an endless lifespan, are naturally close to nature and magic, are strong, and will never get sick or age. But they will die of sadness. Spirit is the best nourishment for life and soul. You need to pay attention to this, Levi. Whether it's you, me, or anyone else, we all need a rest. I never wake up when it's time to sleep. For you and me, the body has never been the most important, but the soul needs to be maintained at all times. This can't be said any more directly, and there's no way to go on." Levi listened silently and nodded. "Is that so?" "Thinking about it, it seems that I haven't slept for several months. Because I'm not tired at all, my body doesn't feel tired. Maybe it is true, as Gandalf said, that the soul also needs occasional maintenance. After all, it cannot be repaired by experience." In the blink of an eye, many days passed, and the two returned along the same route and left the Misty Mountains. The journey was quite smooth, and there were almost no traces of orcs. Even when passing through the path at the pass of the Misty Mountains, there were no orcs to harass. At this time, after going down the mountain and entering the wilderness, Gandalf asked again, "As I said before, I plan to go to the Shire for a stroll. What about you, Levi?" "Me?" Levi gently raised his hand and caught a grain of snow. "I won't go. There are still some things waiting for me to do. While it's winter, snow. This thing can only be seen in the high places of the Misty Mountains or the snowfields in the far north. Other places can only wait until winter. However, snow has never shown any particularly good use, so Levi didn't pay much attention to it. However, although snow is useless, the ice that often appears with it is much more useful. Ice, or the blue ice that will not melt when synthesized with ice, is a must for building high-speed passages. In the first winter in this world, Levi decided to stock up on some materials. On this day, Levi, who had returned from a long journey, cleared the snow at the gate of the city and invited Gandalf to have a meal. Then, the old man immediately set off in a hurry, without staying. "Thank you for your invitation, but if you don't leave now, you will be too late. I don't want to be called a liar by the children." "Well, I hope you have a happy new year." Send Gandalf away. The first thing Levi did was to clear the areas where he often moved in the territory. The thick layers of snow, although beautiful, really hindered his activities. This clearing was a box of snow. After not coming back for a few months, the animals are still the same. Although they are exposed to the heavy snow, they are not abnormal and are very resistant to cold. As for the original animals at the beginning, cows, sheep, horses, etc., they're now lying in a shed with a lid and a heater. They have enough food and water, and they live a comfortable life. But in comparison, the farm looks a bit embarrassed. The weather turned cold, and the water sources in the farm froze. The water turned into ice, causing the nearby arable land to dry up, and the crops on it turned directly into seeds and fell to the ground. After placing a few pieces of fluorescent stone at the bottom of the water to provide heat source and prevent freezing, Levi planted the land again. It's just a heavy snow. It can't overwhelm my resistant crops. After simply dealing with the things affected by the heavy snow in the territory, it was night. Looking at the dark sky, Levi suddenly remembered what Gandalf said. So on this day, Levi rarely went back to the room to sleep. How comfortable. After waking up, Levi felt refreshed. Unlike the energetic he usually felt, this feeling was like his entire state was refreshed. It was fundamentally different from the energy he had when he was full. Let's get to work. Walking into the warehouse and taking out a pile of materials, Levi planned a large area and built an ice field. It takes 9 ordinary ice to synthesize 1 floating ice that will not melt, and 9 floating ice to synthesize the blue ice needed to build a high-speed ice road. The amount of ice needed to build a road can be said to be quite large. This is a long-term collection project. Levi took out the pickaxe enchanted with precise collection and experience repair, and began to chisel ice day and night. Of course, after each collection, it always takes some time for the water to condense into ice again. During this time, Levi will not wait at the ice field. Instead, he took advantage of this gap to do territory construction work. After shoveling snow once, Levi really didn't want to shovel it a second time, but the weather was out of his control. Once it snowed again, the territory would be covered in white again. Fortunately, there are always ways to deal with this situation, such as inserting torches and placing glowstones. These heat-generating blocks can automatically melt the falling snow, so that the trouble of cleaning can be avoided. So on some frequently traveled roads and the main roads of the territory, Levi built one beautiful and warm street lamp after another on the roadside with glowstones or torches. With street lamps, there must be roads, so Levi picked up materials and built roads along the track of street lamps. But roads and street lamps alone are not enough. They seem too monotonous, so there are more decorations on both sides of the road, including artificial landscape trees, small flower beds, steps and benches, fences and small ponds, as well as some fine rivers and small wooden bridges. As he built, Levi couldn't help but think of the scenery and architectural style of the valley, and unconsciously integrated into it, while the style of the roadside castle was constantly changing. On the other side, Gandalf had just finished a grand fireworks party in the Shire and was surrounded by a group of cheering children. His peaceful face was so smiling that his eyes were almost invisible. "Oh, okay, good children, the last one, only the last one." Boom! The fireworks exploded in the air, the earth was bright for a moment, and the hobbits and the whole village exclaimed. It was an extremely pleasant night. Gandalf happily set off fireworks to his heart's content. The children were also excited to recall the fireworks all night and lay in bed unable to sleep. Maybe in a dream, the fireworks will bloom again. "Gandalf, will you come again next year?" The next morning, the children surrounded Gandalf, who was about to leave, and asked, This is not necessarily, but I promise that this is not the last time I come." "Oh, I think I should leave. Goodbye, children." Gandalf waved and left. "I have a hunch that it's better to go this way." Gandalf embarked on his journey again, not knowing where to go. People returned to their own paths and lived their lives as usual. Nothing happened. The days passed by unnoticed. Lightning flashed. Boom! A heavy rain heralded the arrival of spring. March 15th, 2941 the Third Age. Bree. In the Prancing Pony Inn, Gandalf turned his head suddenly and saw a dwarf who looked a little down and out, but had an extraordinary temperament. This face looked familiar. Thorin, son of Thrain? The moment he saw this dwarf, Gandalf suddenly remembered the dwarf prisoner he met in Dol Guldur nearly 100 years ago, who was tortured beyond recognition and even had incomplete memories. The dwarf handed him a key and a map and asked him to give them to his son. But all along, Gandalf didn't know who the dwarf prisoner was, let alone who his son was. However, the moment he saw Thorin, everything suddenly became clear. The dwarf who gave him the key and the map was Thrain II, the king of the dwarves of Durin. And the dwarf in front of him was Thorin Oakenshield, who inherited this title. In an instant, Gandalf thought a lot. At this moment, the impoverished dwarf heir was concentrating on dealing with the food on the plate, but in this noisy inn, several malicious eyes were focused on him. Two ruffians who had been waiting for a long time slowly stood up and surrounded him for both sides. They were spies bribed by the enemy outside. Thorin slowly put down the food in his hand, and one hand was already on the hilt of the sword. "Mind if I sit at the same table with you?" A voice that made people feel inexplicably reassured suddenly came, interrupting the tense atmosphere here. Thorin looked up and saw an old man in a gray robe sitting opposite him. Seeing that the situation was developing in an unknown direction, the two rogues looked at each other and chose to retreat and wait and see. "Let me introduce myself. I am Gandalf, Gandalf the Grey. I know you, obviously." Thorin had heard of this strange old man. "Oh, that's great. What a coincidence today. By the way, what is Thorin Oakenshield visiting Bree for? I heard that someone saw my father wandering in the wilderness near Dunland. I went to look for him, but found nothing." Thrain. Gandalf sighed. The movement of fate sounded again. "Our meeting is not accidental. Right, Gandalf?" "Of course, it's not a coincidence." Gandalf said slowly. "The matter of Lonely Mountain has always worried me, Thorin. The dragon has been entrenched there for too long, and sooner or later it will attract some more evil eyes. The Lonely Mountain is a very important line of defense. If it is broken and occupied by evil forces, then they can go north through Lonely Mountain all the way to Angmar. At that time, the wizard country of Angmar may even be rebuilt. The minions of evil will pass through this route, cross the southern defense line, and directly reach out to the peaceful land west of the Misty Mountains. By then, even places like Lindon and Shire, which have always been far away from the center of war, will face huge threats, and places like Gondor Rohan will be attacked from all sides. The lips and teeth are cold, and no one can be immune. I met some blind guys on the Green Avenue, and they thought I was a tramp. I guess their end will not be too decent. Thorin also knows how powerful some wizards are." Gandalf nodded and took out a piece of sturdy parchment. "I found this on them. A reward." "What reward?" "Your head. Someone wants to kill you." "You can't wait any longer, Thorin. You are the heir to the king of Durin's dwarves. As long as you unite the various armies of the dwarves, you will have the power to retake Erebor. Convene a meeting of the 7 tribes of dwarves and let them fulfill their oath." Thorin was silent for a while. In theory, as long as the dwarf army could be summoned, it would be possible to retake the Lonely Mountain, but the 7 dwarf armies swore allegiance to the holder of the king's crown jewel. The so-called king's crown jewel is the Arkenstone, but this beautiful diamond, a treasure named the Heart of the Mountain, is now guarded by a dragon. Only if I have the Arkenstone can I summon them. But have you forgotten that the Arkenstone was taken away by Smaug long ago? Gandalf stared at the 2 rogues next to him until he forced them out of the house, then said, "What if I help you get back?" "How?" "It is under the feet of a dragon." "Yes, so we need a thief." Gandalf had a hunch that this operation needed a hobbit, which was very important. They are short, light, and silent, and can easily blend into the surrounding environment. They are natural hiders and are very suitable for the role of thief. After silently determining the candidate for the thief in his heart, the wizard lit his pipe, thought about it, and continued. "And a brave warrior, he might be willing to come together. That guy would be interested in this matter." Gandalf's intuition told him so. The outline of the plan was drawn up. Thorin, who had just returned from a long journey in Dunland, and Gandalf, who had just finished a long journey, continued to travel together, heading to the Blue Mountains to discuss specific plans and recruit expedition members. In April, after all the discussions were completed, Gandalf took the lead in embarking on the journey. "I will go find a friend first, and then we will meet in the Shire. I will leave a sign on the door." Gandalf left, and then Thorin and the 12 dwarves who responded to the call, fully armed, embarked on the same journey with Gandalf. April 2941 of the Third Age, the area near the roadside fort. Gandalf stood on a high ground with a cane, looking at the huge and somewhat quiet territory from a distance, frowning. As he looked at it, he couldn't help but light up his pipe. Where am I? Is this still the roadside fort? This roadside doesn't look like a roadside at all. Even though he hadn't entered the territory yet, the greenery spreading from the city walls and some corner views had already aroused Gandalf's visual senses. As he looked, Gandalf suddenly found a man on the city wall waving at him. Gandalf also raised his cane and waved it twice in response. On the city wall, Levi walked to the door, pulled down the lever to open the iron gate, and waited for the wizard to arrive. How are you doing recently, Levi? From a distance, just enough to hear the voice, Gandalf began to greet him. Not bad, probably I haven't felt time pass so fast for a long time. At this moment, Levi only wore a pair of nether alloy boots enchanted with fall protection 4 on his feet, and the rest of his body was not armored, just ordinary clothes. He looked like a casual town resident. Actually, he was also very casual, except for a little phantom pain in his liver. Oh my God, it's incredible. As he approached the city gate, Gandalf was immediately attracted by the scenery inside. He couldn't help but lean his body and look around Levi. Is this still the great wilderness of Eriador? I almost thought I was in Rivendell. Thank you. I did build up the territory a little during this period. A little. Gandalf raised his eyebrows. You really know how to use words. When a friend comes, of course he can't let him stand at the door. Soon, Levi welcomed Gandalf into the castle. After a short rest, he cooked a few dishes himself. The two ate and talked at the table. To be honest, if I didn't know you, I would definitely think this is the new home of the elves. I had to borrow some styles from the valley. So that's what you've been busy with these past few months? Levi nodded. After his continuous construction and planning, this territory has really become like a huge city managed by people, rather than a patchwork of empty land except for a few specific places. Gandalf looked at the complicated scenery outside the window and commented, Everything is good here. The only pity is that it's too quiet. There's no one except you. Also, I suggest you polish the corners of some buildings. Although they look good now, they are too square. If someone accidentally bumps into them, it will definitely hurt. Speaking of what the big pool over there is, I hope you don't mind me being more direct. That thing really seems a bit out of place in this scenery. Very useful advice, and that's the ice field over there. I use it to collect ice in winter. Spring came too suddenly, and I haven't had time to dismantle it yet. Ice harvesting? Is ice harvested like this? Gandalf felt a little confused, but when he thought of Levi, he was relieved. The meal was not hurried, and the two chatted casually. Gandalf talked about his experience in the north of the Shire, the blind bandits on the Green Road, and the current situation of the scattered vagrants there. Vagabonds, Levi muttered and asked, Do you know a vagrant named Farad'n? I haven't seen him for a long time since we last parted. No. Gandalf shook his head. He had a wide range of friends, but not so wide that he knew everyone in Middle-earth. But I can ask for you, and I will tell you if there is relevant information. Oh, that's not necessary. I just asked because you mentioned vagrants. With his skills, there shouldn't be any accidents. I hope so. After ending the topic, Gandalf ate the last piece of meat on his plate, put down the cutlery, and said, Actually, I came here this time to ask if you are interested in participating in an expedition. Expedition? Levi suddenly remembered something. Yes, that's right, it's time. The so-called expedition, of course, refers to the expedition to the Lonely Mountain. Soon, Gandalf told Levi about his encounter with Thorin and Bree and his concerns about the strategy of the Lonely Mountain in the north, regardless of whether Levi could understand. Obviously, he treated Levi as his own, so he told him everything in one go. Thorin Oakenshield, son of Thrain and heir to the title of King of the Dwarves of Durin, has summoned a dwarf expedition team to rush here in the Blue Mountains. We agreed to meet at the Snitch and go to the Lonely Mountain together to take back the Arkenstone. With the Arkenstone, Thorin can summon the dwarf army, launch a general attack on the dragon, and recapture Erebor. This plan sounds good. Levi only said this. Yes, the original plan of the Lonely Mountain expedition was like this, but judging from the final result, there are still some flaws. Gandalf nodded and continued. I don't know if you have heard that in the halls of Erebor, the treasures occupied by the dragons are piled up as high as mountains, and there are countless of them. If you are willing to join the expedition and help the dwarves regain their homes, 1/15 of these treasures will be your reward. According to Gandalf's observation, although Levi sometimes does things similar to himself, he can unconditionally fight for the free people and fight against evil. But it is not without needs. He has his own territory and may have many people in the future. Therefore, there must be rewards. As for Gandalf himself, he never counted himself in. Being able to hinder the enemy is the best reward for him. I agree to join. Until he heard this, Gandalf was relieved, as if a big stone fell from his heart. With the addition of Levi, a powerful fighting force, this expedition is much more stable. Then it's settled. Gandalf immediately finalized the itinerary for the rest of the trip, fearing that Levi would regret it. On the evening of April 25th, we will meet at Bag End in Hobbiton, Shire. Don't worry about getting lost. I will leave a mark on the door. There will be a banquet at that time. Okay, I remember it. Looking at Gandalf's look of, I've already discussed it with the people there, Levi couldn't help but feel a little sympathetic to Bilbo. But at the same time, he felt like laughing. His honest and decent hobbit friend would be in trouble in 2 days. Although Levi's slightly subtle expression really made Gandalf a little confused, he immediately put this little abnormality behind him and set off directly to the Shire. Hobbits. There are many in the Shire, but the adventurous little hobbit of the Took family impressed Gandalf quite deeply, although he could no longer be called a little guy after calculating the time. That's him. While Gandalf was away, Levi packed his backpack, stored the scattered building materials in the warehouse to make room, and brought a bunch of supplies and medicines. Golden apples, various emergency potions, limbas, several sets of food and hay blocks that are enough to last for a long time, armor, weapons, tools, arrows, plus some common supplies and emergency items. Before long, there was not much space left in the backpack. After preparing the supplies for the trip and taking care of the territory, Levi waited for 2 more days before riding off on horseback, mainly because he was afraid that the horse would run too fast. It would be a bit embarrassing to run ahead of Gandalf. A few days passed in the blink of an eye. A bright morning. The Shire, Hobbiton. Good morning. Bilbo raised his pipe and greeted the strange old man standing in front of him. What do you mean? The strange old man looked at the hobbit and said, Do you mean to say that I hope I have a good morning, or that it is a good morning no matter what I am like today, or that you feel particularly good this morning? Or do you just want to say that it is nice to have such a morning? All of these, probably. Bilbo felt that this old man was getting weirder and weirder, suddenly standing at the door of his house to disturb his peaceful morning, and then using his language games to find fault. I hope he is fine. Bilbo thought so. I'm looking for someone to join an adventure. Adventure? Bilbo blinked twice. The things that Levi said? Oh, that's quite interesting. This old man is still an adventurer. But it definitely has nothing to do with me. I think there are no adventure lovers west of Bree. You come to the wrong place. But I have a friend who is a good cook and does like adventure, but he's definitely not me. I can ask him next time I meet him. That's it. Good morning. Bilbo greeted him again and planned to go back to the house to avoid this weird old man, until Gandalf began to recognize relatives. You know me, but the name in your mind doesn't match mine. I'm Gandalf, Bilbo Baggins. You've changed a lot. You weren't like this when you were a child. Well, that's it. Gandalf nodded, and he didn't care whether Bilbo agreed or not. Anyway, he agreed on Bilbo's behalf. Clang! After a tug of war, Gandalf was successfully locked out of the door. Bilbo locked the door from the inside to prevent the weird old man from pestering him. Ziz! Bilbo heard some unusual noises. At this moment, Gandalf's staff turned into a laser pointer and carved a symbol similar to the letter F on the door. Bilbo's peace lasted only 1 day. That night, Bilbo had just fried a fish and was about to enjoy it when he suddenly heard a knock on the door. Dwalin, at your service. Ah, well, Bilbo Baggins at your service. Bilbo quickly tidied up his appearance and returned the salute. Soon Dwalin was minding his own business, eating the dinner Bilbo had prepared for himself. Well, mainly, I didn't expect anyone to come today. Jingle bell. I guess it's the doorbell. Barain, at your service. After a while. Philly, Keely, at your service. You must be Mr. Baggins. No, you're going the wrong way. Bilbo gradually began to realize that something was wrong. That's my mother's dowry box. Can you please don't do this? This box still failed to avoid the fate of rubbing on the soles of shoes. Mr. Baggins, I have to say that you have great taste. This sword was made by our tribe. It is very finely made and is worth a lot of money. Swish! The sword was drawn out and swung twice, making Bilbo retreat in fright. Hey, don't move. That was given to me by Levi. Please put it back. Levi? It sounds familiar. Jingle bell. The conversation was interrupted by the doorbell, and Bilbo opened the door slightly testily. Then he was shocked by the large group of dwarves that came in and lost his temper. Looking up again, I saw an old man bending over and looking into the room. Gandalf. A lively banquet was held in Bag, and like this. Seeing the food in the storage room being eaten bit by bit, Bilbo was also dizzy with anger. But this group of dwarves even made up a song to annoy him on the spot, which made him even more suffocated. There is still one person who is not here, our leader. A dwarf suddenly remembered something. No, two, and he's not here either, Gandalf interrupted, looking out the window. Will he come? The cheerful dinner continued until the doorbell rang again. Thorin. Gandalf, you said before that this place is easy to find. Dwarves, hobbits, wizards, and soon a group of people gathered around the table and began to discuss the expedition. Even if they wanted to wait for Levi, the atmosphere had reached this point, and Gandalf had to participate in the discussion. Fortunately, after a while, the doorbell was still touched. Jingle bell. Everyone looked at the door together, then at Bilbo, and motioned for him to open the door. Gandalf breathed a quiet sigh of relief. Oh well, I hope it's not some weird guy this time. Crunch. A figure wearing black armor and a shabby linen cloak that had been soaked in the blood of some creature, with a slight smell of blood on his body, slowly walked into the door. The moment he walked into the door, the light in the room seemed to dim, as if it was absorbed by the armor. This person is very dangerous. Wow. Some of the dwarves picked up stools. Some reached for their weapons. Some of them pulled out a fork from the drawer next to them because they didn't have any. And some of them took 2 steps forward and stretched out their hands to pull Bilbo back. In an instant, everyone entered a state of battle preparation. However, unlike the dwarves, Bilbo showed a surprised expression. Levi. He opened his arms, and a smile spread across his face for the first time tonight. Oh, this is really the happiest thing for me today. Welcome. I really didn't expect you to come and visit today, as you can see. Bilbo turned around and planned to introduce the dwarves and Gandalf, but was startled by what happened behind him. What are you doing? Okay, put down your weapons. This is our partner, Bomber, Dwalin. Forks and spoons cannot be used as swords and shields. Bofer, you'd better put down your recorder. That thing is harmful to his armor. No threat. Gandalf comforted each one of them, like coaxing children to get the dwarves off their guard. Is he the powerful companion you mentioned, Gandalf? The calmest person present must be Thorin. This dwarf with a kingly demeanor did not make much movement from beginning to end. He just stared at Levi with his eyes and never left for half a second. The smell was familiar to him. It was the blood of orcs. Oh yes, he will definitely be of great help to us on our journey. I guarantee that on my own behalf. On this side, after greeting Bilbo first, Levi said to Thorin, who had been staring at him, "Say hello to you. We seem to have met somewhere." Thorin looked through his memory, looking for this face. Yes, I have traveled far to visit the Blue Mountains, and we met in the workshop in the hall. Hey, are you the human who stayed at the hotel at the door a few months ago? A dwarf asked. Levi nodded and greeted many dwarves with a smile. Suddenly, another dwarf made a voice. I seem to have heard that a few months ago, a human traveler drank up the young man with the best drinking capacity in the area. Really or not, the dwarves couldn't believe it. He, a human, can drink a dwarf? Stop joking. You. But it seemed to be true. Many people were present. I don't know who said something, and the dwarves were immediately silenced. I don't believe it unless he drinks with me once. The dwarves began to boo. Okay. Now is not the time to talk about this dash. Seeing that the situation was about to get out of control in another direction, Gandalf quickly came out to smooth things over. You have a strong smell of blood on your body, Levi. Did you encounter any danger on the road? Levi nodded. I can't say it's dangerous, but I did encounter some wargs and oaks who didn't have long eyes. Strange. They would actually attack you? Gandalf raised his eyebrows. What are those beasts afraid to do? A dwarf who didn't understand the situation said. The Valles of Anduin are too far away from the Blue Mountains, and word has not yet fully spread. But what Levi did will eventually spread to the entire Middle-earth and become some kind of rumor. I also find it strange that this team is different from the ones I have encountered before. They are fully equipped and have everything they need, and there seems to be a strong leader behind them, which makes them a lot bolder. But I still wipe them all out. Although their wargs run very fast and lose direction, it is obvious that my horse runs faster. Gandalf nodded, not surprised by Levi's reasonable remarks. The dwarves looked at each other and whispered. Some people thought that although this warrior looked strong, he was really capable of bragging. Bilbo was confused and had no idea what Levi was talking about. Orcs, wargs? They were all words he had never heard before, but from the conversation, Bilbo could be sure of one thing. Oh, so you know each other, Gandalf, Levi. Okay, as expected. Bilbo blinked and took a deep breath. He decided to find an opportunity to quietly remind Levi that he should be careful when making friends. After the small interlude, Bilbo moved a stool for Levi so that he could sit on the other side of the table and join the meeting. Now the table was full, with no space left. Levi still had a place to sit here, and Bilbo could only stand on tiptoe behind Thorin and look at the table. We must seize the opportunity to recapture Erebor. After analyzing the pros and cons, Thorin declared, but there is no way into the mountain. Balin was always the wisest of the dwarves. My dear Balin, this is not true. Gandalf bent down, took out a key and a map from his robe, and said to Thorin, this was given to me by your father Thrain, of course, just for my safekeeping. Now it's yours. Thorin took the key and held it firmly in his hand. If there's a key, there's a door. There's another way in. The dwarves saw hope. Even if you can enter the mountains, it is still very dangerous to find gems. Gandalf said slowly, but as long as you are careful and smart, it is still possible. So we need a snitch. A dwarf said. Everyone's eyes were focused on Bilbo. However, Bilbo had never stolen anything since he was a child, and of course he could not accept this. Soon the dwarves questioned him, and then they started to make a fuss. Enough. I said Bilbo Baggins was a snitch, and he is a snitch. Gandalf stood up and unleashed his huge pressure. The dwarves felt as if their throats were being strangled, and no one dared to question it. Levi and Thorin were the only ones at the scene who were not affected by this momentum. Thorin is the king among the dwarves, so naturally he will not be easily affected by things like momentum. As for Levi, he thinks the special effects are pretty good. Given the contract, Bilbo began to look carefully at this long contract. 1/15, well, that's fair. Poof. However, after reading the contract and being deliberately frightened by several dwarves, the hobbit who was used to a comfortable life still fainted and fell to the ground. This is so exciting. After a while, Bilbo, I cannot guarantee that you will come back. But if you come back, everything will be different. Gandalf was giving Bilbo some psychological counseling in the living room. Bilbo thought about Gandalf's words and remembered the wonderful stories Levi would tell every time he came and hesitated. No, I still can't sign. Bilbo refused. On the other side, the dwarves were discussing things at the door. The one named Levi seems to me to be reliable, but that snitch. Some people shook their heads. Everything is going wrong. In the final analysis, even we're not very strong warriors. We are just a group of toy makers and tinkerers. Thor heard this, but he didn't agree with it. He began his speech to encourage everyone. To me, Any one of these dwarves is stronger than the army of Iron Hills. Because they responded to my call, their loyalty and courage are enough. Gandalf listened to the discussion of the dwarves and looked at Levi again. You can fight that dragon, right? He asked quietly. Levi glanced at him and replied in a low voice, I don't know. In fact, I haven't seen the dragon, but I can try if necessary. Gandalf didn't speak for a while, but turned his head and told Balin, keep a copy of the contract in Bag End. Early the next morning, there is another running figure in Hobbiton. In the woods, Levi controlled his horse to walk as slowly as possible to avoid accidentally running away and throwing away the large army. There was no way. The speed of the ponies ridden by these dwarves could only be said to be average, and they really couldn't compare with Levi's full-speed horse. Hey, are those you are wearing on your horse diamonds? After walking for a long time, someone finally couldn't help but ask. In fact, the dwarves almost kept staring at Levi's horse armor without blinking. Well, yes, it's sturdy and useful in combat. Can I touch it? Of course, feel free to do so. Oh my God, it's so luxurious. How long does it take to dig mines to piece together such a big armor? Just as the dwarf was sighing, a voice suddenly came from behind him. Wait for me. It was Bilbo, and he came with the signed contract. Seeing the scene, most of the people in the team howled, and a few whistled. Welcome to Thorin Oakenshield's expedition, Mr. Baggins. Not long after, Bilbo got on his pony, walked side by side with Levi and Gandalf, and started chatting. They placed a bet on whether you would join. Most people bet that you would not join, and a small number of people bet that you would. What about you? Snap! Gandalf raised his hand, caught the small bag of silver coins, and put it away with a smile. I never doubted you. Bilbo turned his head again and looked to the other side. Another small bag of silver coins was thrown over and was caught by Levi. I would be happy to add Bilbo's name to my next adventure story. Being part of the story, it's an amazing feeling, isn't it? My hometown is behind me, and the world is in front of me. Young Bilbo sets foot outside the Shire for the first time. That night, Bilbo couldn't fall asleep. He just lay down for a while and then got up. Also not sleepy were Gandalf and Levi. One was leaning on a stone and smoking a pipe, and the other was standing on a high place looking around. Roar! Some strange calls and restlessness echoed in the mountains, forests, and canyons, making people feel uneasy. What is this sound? Bilbo was a little confused. He had never seen an oak before, and naturally he had never heard of an oak. This movement immediately woke up several dwarves, including Thorin. This is an oak, a ferocious species. There are no less than dozens of them when you hear the sound. Philly explained to Bilbo, they are everywhere in the Lonely Land. They like to attack when people are sleeping. They lose their lives silently. Bilbo was startled by these remarks and felt a little panicked. Everywhere, Gandalf, who was smoking here, glanced at Levi, who was watching from a high place, and shook his head silently. There used to be a lot of them in this wilderness. It's a bit unclear now. Sensing the approach of orcs, more and more people woke up. Under Bilbo's puzzled gaze, Balin began to talk about the battles they had experienced, including the origin of the title Thorin Oakenshield. At the same time, in a dark forest where nothing could be seen, a group of oak scouts set their sights on the place where the bonfire was lit. Tell the master that the dwarf scum has been found. The squad leader gave the order and sent Oak to continue tracking while rushing back to report. Boom! Heavy rain comes as soon as it comes. The next day, a group of people rode on horses and moved forward in the rain. Mr. Gandalf, can you please let the rain stop? When it stops raining, it will stop. Gandalf said some nonsense literature to the dwarf, and then continued. If you want to change the weather, you'd better find another wizard. Any more? Bilbo asked curiously. Are there any other wizards? Have. Gandalf glanced at Levi, hesitated, and said, there are 5 of us in total. Besides me, there are Saruman in white robes, Radagast in brown robes, and 2 blue robes. After speaking, Gandalf looked at Levi again. Levi also glanced at him. Bilbo also noticed that Gandalf seemed to have been looking at Levi, and he also cast his gaze over. Well, Gandalf is right. I have nothing to add. All right, Seeing that Levi didn't say anything, Gandalf had no choice but to continue the previous topic, talking about the brown robe. Brown robe, Radagast, is the man Gandalf mentioned after seeing Levi's alchemy table, who can also make medicine. However, the medicine he concocted is usually used to rescue small animals. This brown-robed wizard lives in the forest all year round and is close to nature. In his eyes, all living things are equally worthy of respect and love. Even if it is just a small animal, he is willing to use all his strength to save it. Except, of course, for evil creatures spawned from the darkness, such as wargs and the great spiders of the Black Forest. The heavy rain gradually stopped, and the group took a short rest before continuing on the road. Just like this, we have been crossing Bree, walking out of the last human gathering place, passing through Fingiunding and heading east. On the way, Gandalf suddenly pointed in a direction and said, "Oh, we are here. Over there is Levi's territory, the roadside fortress." Territory? Is Levi still a lord? A dwarf asked. This is serious. Then wouldn't he be the same as Thorin, a lord who went out to conquer in person? Well, you can say that, and he is not an ordinary lord. Gandalf asked riddles without explaining them. Does that mean we are near your home now, Levi? Bilbo asked. He was very interested in Levi's family. Levi usually visited him. He had not taken the initiative to visit Levi yet. Yes, my territory is not far from the main road. Then can we go and take a look? I welcome you. Levi nodded. Bilbo looked at the people around him and asked with his eyes. Levi has said so. I don't have any objection anyway. Gandalf at the front said this. The dwarves also made a fuss. They had been curious about this guy for a long time. However, at this time, there was still one person who had not expressed his opinion. The dwarves were curious. Whether they were going or not, they still had to wait for the leader to speak. Since the lords here have expressed their welcome, I have no problem with it. If you come to the dwarf territory in the future, we will also welcome you. Thorin said to Levi, that couldn't be better. The dwarves are happy and can take a rest, and Bilbo is also happy and can visit Levi's home. As for Gandalf, Gandalf was already leading the way. Oh my God! A moment later, a group of dwarves stood in front of the city gate, looking up at the towering city wall with no end in sight, each with their mouths wide open. You mean this is Levi's territory? I've never heard of such a big city here. When was it built? Why hasn't there been any news about it? It's a miracle, more majestic than any human city I've ever seen. I have never seen Baiching before. But how we get in? Hey, your lord is back. Open the door. A dwarf shouted at the non-existent guard on the city wall. Gandalf reminded him. No need to shout, there is no one inside. Then he walked skillfully to the iron gate and waited for Levi to come. This iron gate is very strange. It seems that there is no lock on it, but it just can't be pushed. It must be some kind of magic. Snap! Levi put down the lever and opened the iron gate. Welcome to my territory. I think we can rest here for a few days. There are enough supplies. Everyone's luggage and horses were quickly placed. The dwarves marveled at the craftsmanship of the city and looked around. I guess the architects here must have some quirks. Everything is square, but I like it. Square and neat. To be honest, it really hits the aesthetic point of the dwarves. Many of their buildings and facilities are angular and look very hard. What is that? Someone pointed at the patrolling iron golem and asked. Gandalf stopped the dwarf from trying to touch it and explained. That is a city-guarding golem created by Levi, responsible for the safety of this territory. I advise you not to test its hardness at will. In my opinion, it is no problem for this thing to beat 10 orcs. Well, it may not be a problem to beat 10 dwarves. Really, some dwarves were dissatisfied. However, when an iron golem really came over with a clang, these dwarves felt a little weak in the legs and immediately hugged each other. Oh no, 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 no. We are the guests invited by your master. The iron golem scratched his head. He took out a small red flower from somewhere and handed it to Balin, who was standing in the front. All this was beyond everyone's expectations. Oh, thank you. The old warrior with a white beard thanked the iron golem politely. They are quite friendly, aren't they? Balin said calmly, as if it was not him who was shouting just now. While they were talking, another iron golem came over and handed a small red flower to another dwarf. I agree. The dwarf put the flower away and nodded. This was the most appropriate time for the iron golem to send flowers. At least the height was very suitable. I say, everyone, don't stand outside. I prepared a sumptuous lunch. Why don't you come in and have a meal first? On this side, the dwarves were still thinking about the flowers sent by the iron golem, but Levi had already prepared a large table of food and was waiting for the group to come in. Bilbo, who had been stunned for a long time, immediately recovered when he heard that there was food to eat. "Wait for me," he shouted. That was the food Levi cooked himself. Hiccup. At the castle dining table, Bomber burped, rolled his eyes, sat on a chair, snored, and fell asleep. "Oh," Gandalf shook his head. "Who will carry him into the house? I told you not to eat so much." Old Balin patted his round belly and said, "Forgive me, Gandalf. I have never eaten such delicious food. Everything here is so beautiful. The scenery is beautiful. The food is delicious, but it is a pity that there is no wine. If I had known there would be such a banquet, I would have spent all my silver coins to buy a few barrels of good wine in the town I passed by before." At this moment, all the dwarves on the dining table were chubby and burping. Thorin was the more restrained one, chewing the food carefully from beginning to end. But the fork in his hand never stopped. Seeing that Gandalf seemed to be peeking at him intentionally or unintentionally, Thorin temporarily stopped what he was doing, coughed twice, and said, "I have to say that these dishes are indeed worthy of praise, and many of them are unprecedented and quite novel." After finishing his review, Thorin greeted Levi again. "Thank you very much for entertaining us." After seeing this fortification, Levi's image in everyone's minds was completely different from before. He was not only a wandering knight, but also a lord who went on an expedition. Although this territory seems to have a few people, or in other words, no one has been seen moving at all, but with the ability of this lord, if he launches a call to take in the people, there will definitely be many people coming over one after another. In addition, judging from the situation in the territory, this lord seems to be a powerful being who can use some magic. However, it is not surprising that someone who can mix with Gandalf can use some magic. There are dwarves. After asking a few questions curiously, Levi did not deny it. After all, strictly speaking, these miraculous things can indeed be summarized by the word magic. All these things can be seen with the naked eye. The attitude of the dwarves has changed a lot. They're just reckless, not stupid. "Eat as much as you can, and don't save for me." Levi waved his hand and greeted everyone in the expedition team. Dwarves do have huge appetites, second only to hobbits. But even if they could eat, or even if everyone had finished eating and then carried a big bag of food, compared to the reserves that Levi had accumulated during this period, it was only a drizzle. He didn't even feel that the food reserves had decreased. "This is the dry food I prepared." The dwarves looked at Levi's piles of dried meat, fruits and vegetables, and bread, and slowly said, "You call this dry food?" Before this, everyone ate cram, which is a traveling bread that dwarves and humans from the River Valley State prefer bring. It can be made delicious, but if you want both taste and shelf life, then it is not possible. So realistic. I can eat this kind of dry food for the rest of my life. One dwarf took a bite of the dried meat and muttered. After eating and drinking, a group of dwarves walked around and visited the territory. Levi's castle is very big and has many rooms. When you're tired of walking around, you can just find a room and sleep directly. The night passed very peacefully. For some reason, there are no traces of orcs around here, and the terrifying howls that could be heard almost every day in the wilderness have disappeared, and there is no need to be vigilant when sleeping. The dwarves went to rest one after another. On the top floor of the castle, Gandalf leaned against the window, lit his pipe with a ring of fire, and smoked silently, his eyes unblinking, as if he was thinking about something. The pattern of Middle-earth may undergo some changes. Wizards, or some special and powerful elves, have some kind of precognitive ability. They can vaguely detect possible future trends. "Why don't you take a rest, Gandalf?" Levi came up, sat on the chair at the back, took a bite of an apple, and threw one to Gandalf. Gandalf caught the apple, wiped it with his robe, took a bite, and nodded. Sweet, crispy, and juicy. I will, let's just say I need to get some sleep. The bed you have here has a kind of magical power. Once you lie down on it, you will unconsciously want to sleep until dawn. What do you think of this operation? Gandalf suddenly asked. I believe it will work. Gandalf nodded. I hope so. The night passed quickly. Early the next morning, the digested dwarves got up one after another, packed their luggage in the dry food prepared by Levi, and set off eastward again. During this meal, everyone became familiar with Levi, and several dwarves came over to chat with him on the way. When you arrive at our home again, you will know that the enthusiasm of the dwarves is by no means false. Strong wine, large roasts with bones, banquets, songs, and warm stoves. You will definitely not come in vain. I'm looking forward to it and will definitely go if I get the chance. Walking along, everyone soon arrived at a place that Levi was very familiar with, the last bridge. This bridge has a long history dating back to the First Era. The country that originally built and maintained the bridge no longer exists. Currently, Rivendell takes the initiative to assume the responsibility of maintaining the bridge. It is precisely because of the care of the valley that the bridge remains open to this day. There should have been some farmers living here before. After crossing the bridge, everyone quickly discovered a ruins with several destroyed houses scattered here and there, and the people inside were missing. We'll rest here tonight, Thorin ordered. Levi opened the map and slapped his head. Well, it's here. No wonder I didn't find it before. When he came to the troll forest to look for treasure, he entered the forest from the west and chopped all the way to the east. The place where the expedition decided to rest this time was at the southern border of the forest. I think it's better to keep going. Gandalf looked at the ruins of the house and had a bad feeling that something was wrong here. Why was the house destroyed? Where did the farmers go? We can go to Rivendell. I said I won't get close to there. Thorin walked over slowly and rejected Gandalf's suggestion. Why not go? The elves can help us, provide us with food, shelter, and advice, just like Levi. Thorin glanced at Levi, then looked at Gandalf. Maybe it's true, but I don't need the advice of those elves who don't help. The two soon quarreled, and Levi watched helplessly beside them. I gave you the map and the key, not for you to hold on to them. I don't think it's something you should keep. It means it was originally mine. Thorin's words directly made Gandalf so angry that he had a heart attack. I brought you the key and the map with good intentions, but you actually blamed me. Old Gandalf shook his head and turned away. Gandalf, where are you going? Bilbo asked. To be with the only reasonable person in the area. Who? Myself. I've had enough of dwarves today. I really want Levi to knock them all out and tie them up to Rivendell. Gandalf suddenly stopped. Levi, come with me. Okay. Levi glanced at Bilbo, indicating that he didn't need to worry, and then got up and left with the angry old man. Bilbo looked left and right, wanting to say something but stopping. The departure of their common friends made Bilbo, who was still here, feel a little embarrassed. Bombur, light a fire and cook. However, Thorin ignored Gandalf, who was leaving, and just directed everyone to prepare to rest on the spot in an orderly manner. Other side, the two of them walked forward for a long time. When Gandalf calmed down a little, he said to Levi, whether those dwarves are willing or not, we must go to Rivendell. The cipher text on the map can only be understood by Elrond, the Lord of Rivendell. We alone cannot accomplish the ultimate goal of this trip. We need the help of the elves. Levi, if necessary, I hope you can help me persuade them, no matter what method you use. Okay, I will do it if necessary. Levi agreed. But where are we going? Why don't we go back? Seeing that it was getting dark, Levi asked Gandalf. Gandalf was silent for a moment and responded, I don't want to see the dwarves for the time being. So, you go back first, and I will continue to walk forward to explore the road, and then go back later. All right, this is still a matter of anger. Levi turned around and walked back. On the other side, near the broken house, Bilbo was carrying 2 bowls, preparing to give soup to Keely and Philly. However, when he passed by, he found that the 2 were standing still, in a daze. What's wrong? We lost 2 horses. There were supposed to be 17 horses here, but now there are only 15. In addition to the 15 horses used for riding, there are 2 horses specially used for carrying supplies. Do you want to tell Thorin first? No, we don't want to worry him just yet. Levi's stupid-looking horse is also missing. Keely and Philly had a headache. This was a big problem. They couldn't afford to pay for the equipment on the horse. As a snitch from the expedition team, I think you should help us research this matter. Hearing this, Bilbo had no choice but to put down the bowl in his hand and look around. These big trees seemed to have been uprooted by something. Looking at the traces left at the scene, Bilbo felt a little panic from the bottom of his heart. What could be strong enough to uproot a tree? Agree, Chili said, and suddenly noticed something seemed to be in the distance. Wait, there seems to be fire over there. What's that? Troll, Keely replied with a serious face. It's time for you to play your role, Mr. Baggins. Those mountain trolls are clumsy and have poor intelligence. They will definitely not see you when you are so small. Me? No, I don't. We'll be watching over your shoulder. Thump! Before he finished speaking, Bilbo was already pushed out of the grass. All right, now that things have come to this, we can only bite the bullet. Go get someone. Although Keely and Philly were afraid of being scolded by Uncle Thorin, they could still distinguish the seriousness of the matter. They realized that the trolls were not something they could handle, so they immediately called everyone over. A group of dwarves watched Bilbo's actions nervously, until he was discovered by the troll and caught in his hands. Are there any of your accomplices around here? No. Lie. No, I said no. Even though the situation was dangerous, Bilbo was determined not to betray his teammates. Seeing Bilbo's appearance, Keely couldn't hold back on the spot. He picked up his sword and rushed out to slash the troll. Let him go. Go! Seeing that he could no longer hide, Thorin immediately gave the order and was the first to rush out. A group of dwarves roared and followed closely behind. The scene quickly became a mess, but despite the chaos, the dwarves' cooperation seemed to be tight, and they hit the trolls hard one after another. The extremely high sense of team fighting and tacit understanding are the reasons why the dwarves can become a powerful army in Zhongzhou despite their short bodies. Damn troll, try this. When someone picked up a warhammer and hit a troll on the head hard. However, the blow that would normally blow a person's head apart only knocked out a few of the troll's teeth. The skin of these trolls is too thick and as hard as rock, making it difficult for ordinary weapons to damage them. Even if he was as strong as a dwarf, he could only scratch some skin and fat and make the troll scream, but it was still very difficult to inflict fatal injuries. But even so, with the cooperation of the dwarves, the trolls soon fell into a disadvantage and saw that they would be killed if they kept grinding for a while. Suddenly, 2 trolls grabbed Bilbo's limbs. Drop your weapons, or we'll tear him apart. The group looked at Thorin. Thorin looked at Bilbo, whose eyes were filled with horror. Without hesitation, he put down his weapon. He chose to exchange the safety of his own group of 13 dwarves for Bilbo's life, rather than exchange Bilbo's life for the safety of 13 dwarves. Trolls prefer fresh food and usually do not kill their prey until it reaches the entrance. At this moment, a group of dwarves were tied to one side, groaning and cursing the trolls and watching the water in the pot boil. We have to hurry up, or it's going to be dawn, and I don't want to turn into stone. A troll said. The speaker was unintentional, but the listener was intentional. Bilbo realized something and immediately stood up to delay time. No, that's not what dwarves do. You have to, skin them first. The dwarves made a noise. What did you say, you little hobbit? You were waiting for me to come out dash. Thorin kicked the shouting dwarf to signal him to be quiet. Bilbo ignored the dwarf's threat and was trying hard to think of ways to delay time. Thinking about it, he suddenly saw a person appearing on the boulder next to him. A man in black armor. The man raised his finger to Bilbo in a quiet sign. Then, while the troll's attention was on Bilbo, they suddenly jumped out. Boom! With a critical strike from the sword, the hit troll screamed, and the hard skin that the dwarves had been unable to break through despite all their efforts was cut open, and blood flowed out. At the same time, as the flames of the sword flickered, the troll was also ignited. While its body was burning with flames, it could not stop wailing and fell to the ground rolling. They have accomplices. At this moment, the trolls did not realize the seriousness of the matter at all, and actually attacked directly. Levi slashed with his sword again, setting the second troll on fire. However, there was still one troll that was not hit. The fist, which was bigger than an entire dwarf, hit Levi with the wind. "Danger behind you!" Thorin shouted at the critical moment. But Levi just raised the corners of his mouth slightly, raised a hand, and said boom, to directly block the troll's attack. His figure never took a step back. This is the knockback resistance that comes with netherite armor. I must be hallucinating. Some dwarves stared at this scene with wide eyes, unable to blink. That punch would have forced everyone on the scene to get down on the spot, but he actually raised his hand to block it. Blocking the incoming fist with a sword, Levi kept turning around, one person suppressing 3 trolls at the same time and fighting. What is surprising is that every time the trolls made a move, Levi seemed to have expected it. Generally, you can directly make moves in advance to avoid it. It's like he has the ability to predict the future. Although Levi could have directly relied on his armor to attack the troll, he still subconsciously remembered his previous combat experience and showed off the troll fiercely while moving around. "Damn loach," a troll cursed. However, the smartest one suddenly stopped and took 2 steps back. Facing this situation, he couldn't help but think of a scary story that was circulated among the ethnic group a long time ago. That is the legend of the money-eating ghost. It is said that no troll attack can hit the money-swallowing ghost. The money-swallowing ghost will search for lone trolls, kill them, and swallow all the treasures they have stored, taking them away without leaving any behind. Because of this legend, many trolls who liked to live alone at that time chose to form a group and act together. You are a money-eater," the troll who retreated behind shouted, his eyes filled with horror. "What kind of money-eater?" The Thai dwarves looked at me, and I looked at you, wondering what the troll was shouting. "That's what you call me." Levi shook off the blood on his sword and smiled. But in the eyes of the troll, this smile seemed like a deadly scythe. "Run quickly." Boom. "Let the dawn take you away." Before the trolls could escape, a figure suddenly appeared on the boulder next to them. He slammed his stick down, causing the boulder to crack on the spot. The sun just shines in. The 3 trolls maintained their fleeing posture and turned into stone sculptures. "Gandalf!" Bilbo exclaimed. "Oh, it seems that I didn't arrive in time. It seems that the problem here can be solved without me. Why are you rushing to grab the head when you are at low health?" Levi put away his sword helplessly and said hello to Gandalf. "You are just in time." "Ahaha! Wizards are never late. They just come the right time," Gandalf said to Levi cheekily. He also knocked on the 3 troll statues in the escape posture with his cane, nodded, and seemed very satisfied with this masterpiece. "Fortunately, no one is missing an arm or a leg. This is all thanks to your thief and Levi." Thorin walked over slowly and greeted Gandalf, as if the previous small dispute had never happened. "These trolls must have come down from the Eden Wasteland." Gandalf looked down at the black blood that fell from Levi's sword and said slowly, "This is not a good sign. The Eden Wasteland is a dark place close to Angmar and the Misty Mountains. It is also one of the places where trolls often appear and live. The last time the trolls dared to go so far was when evil was rampant. That is, the dark period when Sauron was still there." Gandalf looked at Levi. "Nothing is certain. Maybe it is as you think." Levi said something that only Gandalf could understand, which made the others confused. "Sauron, it is not so easy to die. Even if he was chopped into meat paste, he could turn into a pool of black blood and be reborn many years later. Although he lost the ring, no one can say for sure that he has disappeared from this world. But at this time, only Levi can be sure that Sauron is still active." Gandalf shook his head, temporarily suppressed his doubts, and turned to look at the nearby terrain. Trolls can't move in the daylight. There must be their caves nearby. However, while Gandalf was talking here, Levi had already skillfully climbed over a hill and found an entrance where flies and mosquitoes were flying around. "This way." Levi held a torch and cleared the way in front. "What is this place? It smells so bad." A group of dwarves covered their noses, and several of them coughed directly because of the smell. The place where the trolls hide their treasures. Crash! When they walked to the deepest part of the cave, Suddenly, they felt something different under their feet. Boxes of jewelry were piled in the corner, and gold and silver coins gathered on the ground like a hill, shining under the reflection of the torches. "We've made a fortune." Several dwarves picked up shovels and buried the treasures that could not be taken away to prevent others from finding and taking them away. Thorin picked up 2 pairs of swords from the dusty cobwebs next to him and looked at them carefully. This is not something that a troll can make. It is not something that the craftsmanship of human blacksmiths can reach. Gandalf took a sword, blew off the dust on it, and looked at it carefully. This sword comes from Gondolin, forged by the high elves of the First Age. When he heard that it was something from the elves, Thorin immediately let go of his hand with disdain and felt that the sword in his hand was instantly not. There is no better sword in the world than this. It smells so good. Thorin put away the sword, took it out and looked at it for a while, and nodded with satisfaction. Glamdrin and Okris. Levi recognized the 2 swords at a glance. The former was the sword of Turgon, the lord of Gondolin and the High King of the Noldor. The latter was a pair of swords with the former. It is unknown who holds it, but it must be a very capable elf. Both swords have killed thousands of orcs and have their own unique names. "Can you let me see it?" Levi said to the 2. Without hesitation, Gandalf handed over the sword, and then Thorin also handed the sword to Levi. Levi took the 2 swords and looked at them carefully. Glamdrin attack +9. Okris attack +9. The damage is the same as his own ancient sword. Both are first-class swords. "What do you think of this sword, Levi? If you like it, take it. I believe it will play a greater role in your hands." Seeing Levi staring at the sword, Gandalf said tactfully, "His own cane is good to use, and he doesn't necessarily need an extra sword. It's a very good sword, but it's not necessarily better than mine." Levi handed the 2 swords back and drew out his own elven ancient sword. Even in the dark cave, when this sword was drawn, its blade still shone like ice. Compared with the other 2, this sword has a more chilling feeling. In any case, these are swords that are stronger and sharper than the Netherworld gold swords. After hiding the treasure in the cave, the group walked out. During this time, Gandalf glanced at a sharp-looking elven short sword on the ground. So he picked it up and handed it to Bilbo and gave him some instructions. True courage is not about deciding when to kill, but about deciding when to forgive. Something is approaching. Someone outside suddenly shouted, and Gandalf immediately went out to check. Bilbo stared at the dagger for a while and followed him out. However, it was soon discovered that it was just a false alarm. It was Radagast the Brown Robe who came. "Gandalf, there is something wrong in the Green Forest. There are many evil big spiders. They must be the evil offspring of Ungoliant. Ungoliant, a powerful being similar to the evil god outside the realm that was born in the void, has now disappeared. Only one of its offspring, Shelob, can make Sauron dare not provoke it, and he can only send a few orcs to it occasionally. I went to Dol Guldur to see it. It was very scary. By the way, I also found this." Radagast took out a tightly wrapped sword. "This is the sword of the Witch King of Angmar." Gandalf's face was solemn. Roar! Suddenly, a wolf's howl interrupted the conversation between the 2. A ward jumped down from a high place and was killed by Levi with a sword. Then several more jumped down to attack, but they were quickly dealt with. "Warg Scout. That means there's a large group of orcs approaching around. We have to leave here quickly." "No, the ponies are scared away." A dwarf ran over in a panic and added, "Except Levi's horse." Bilbo sighed. "Well, it's in vain. I'll lead them away. I'll kill them." Brown Robe and Levi said almost at the same time, and they looked at each other sideways, wondering what they were thinking. "Those are Gundabad wargs. They will catch up with you." Gandalf said to Brown Robe, "This is the Roscoble hare. I want to give them a try." Seeing that there was no time to argue, Gandalf looked at Radagast and then at Levi. "I think it's better." A moment later, on the plain, half of the wargs were chased and chopped by Levi on horseback, and the other half of the wargs chased Radagast and bit him. Gandalf led the dwarves and Bilbo to run in another direction, avoiding the pursuit of a group of ward riders led by a small leader. Damn it, don't worry about the wizard riding the hare. Go and hold that human. We will kill the dwarf first. The small leader ordered angrily. As the troops of the brown robes withdrew, the pressure on Gandalf and the dwarves increased suddenly, but they could still cope with it. I finally know that Levi is not bragging. Beaufort quietly poked his head out from behind a huge rock and looked at the group of wargs howling as Levi chased them, with a sigh on his face. I don't know how there are such strong humans in the world. Swish! The long sword was swung down, and another warg ignited with flames and fell to the ground wailing. Levi rode a fast horse and quickly pursued the fleeing oaks, buying time for the dwarves. Shoot his horse first. The oak leader shouted, and several archers drew arrows in the distance and knocked their bows, aiming at Levi's crotch and shooting in a burst. However, let's not talk about whether these archers can hit the horse while running at full speed. Even if they hit it, they will only lose 1 or 2 drops of blood, which is really not worth mentioning. Judging from the several groups of hay blocks in Levi's backpack, even if he stood there and let the oak shoot all the arrows, he couldn't kill the horse. As for Levi, shaking his health bar a few times is a sign of respect for these arrows. Now that it is below a certain level, it is difficult for ordinary bows and arrows to cause effective damage to him. With the sound of horse hooves, Levi struck a warg with his sword and kept pursuing forward. He was chopping, and suddenly a loud and familiar sound of a horn sounded in the distance. Rumble! A group of Noldor cavalry wearing silver-gray armor galloped over, and they formed a corresponding formation in advance before engaging the orcs. Immediately afterwards, there was a one-sided battle. The little oak leader shouted and tried to regroup his team, but his voice was soon drowned in the wailing of his men before they died. Withdraw! After shouting, the little boss was the first to run away. Originally, the fierce man was destined to lose this battle, so we could only try to hold him back, kill the dwarf first, and then run away quickly. Now, in addition to that man, another group of elven cavalry has arrived. What else is there to fight? Soon, the oaks on this plain were running away, dying, and all disappeared. Levi looked around, but did not see Gandalf and the dwarves. It seemed that they had already walked towards the valley from the hidden intersection. After confirming that there were no remaining oaks, the elves reorganized their formation, put away their weapons, and ran toward Levi. Why is it you again? Elrond rode forward and began talking to Levi. You seem to have become much stronger since we last met. I have often heard rumors about you recently. I'm honored. Levi nodded and said hello to the Lord of the Valley. I'm just wondering why these oaks started wandering around again. Elrond looked at Levi thoughtfully. No, it's not because of me this time. As for the reason, it's a bit complicated. They should be approaching the valley soon. The other side, the entrance to the valley. Mithrandil. An elf came down the steps and greeted Gandalf. Ah, Linder, I heard that you crossed the Shanshui River. Linder said in Elvish. Gandalf came over and said seriously, I have to talk to Lord Elrond. Lord Elrond is not here. Not here. Where is he? As Gandalf was asking. Suddenly the horn sounded at the entrance of the valley, and a group of cavalry walked in orderly along the slender bridge. Alert! The dwarves protected Bilbo in the middle, picked up their weapons, and stared at the group of elven cavalry. Wait, the one at the end is Levi. Bilbo pushed aside the dwarf and squeezed out. Gandalf, Elrond greeted. Lord Elrond. Melanin, my friend. Gandalf greeted the elf, Lord in Elvish. After taking off his helmet and handing the weapon to Linder, and chatting with Gandalf for a while, Elrond expressed his doubts. It's really strange that the oaks have been approaching here again and again in a short period of time. Last time, they were attracted by a human who was good at fighting. Why are they attracted this time? It should be because of us. While they were talking, Levi, who was walking at the back, skillfully handed over his horse to an elf to take care of him, and went over to say hello to Gandalf and Elrond. So you know each other. Elrond looked at Gandalf and then at Levi. That's what I want to say too. Although he said this, Gandalf seemed not surprised at all. He just nodded and continued the topic, turning sideways to show the dwarf behind him. Welcome, Thorin, son of Thrain. Elrond greeted politely. We probably haven't met before. Thorin, the chat wizard, began to play his part. You are quite grandfatherly in your actions. I have known Thror when he was the king under the mountain. Really? I've never heard him say a word about you. Elrond took a deep breath and ordered in Elvish. Sign up the fire, prepare the wine, and entertain our distinguished guests. This lord knew better than to be as knowledgeable as the dwarves. Is he talking bad about us? Hearing that the other party was speaking a language he didn't understand again, Gloin couldn't help but get angry. No, Gloin, he is inviting us to a banquet. Gandalf was a little tired. The dwarves looked at me, and I looked at you, and they gathered around and discussed for a while. Oh, in that case, then lead the way. Unlike visiting Levi's territory, the elves and dwarves were not polite at all. After a while, the dwarves looked at the rather environmentally friendly dining table in front of them, with expressions of embarrassment on their faces. Oh my God, is this what they usually eat? This is far worse than Levi's. It doesn't even have any meat at all. It's all vegetables, and it's all raw. My pony won't eat this. A dwarf threw away the leaves in his hand with a look of disgust. Can Levi cook? If he cooks, it's okay to eat vegetables. The dwarves gathered at a table to discuss the elves' food. Keely secretly winked at an elf. Although I don't like elves, this one here looks pretty good. That's not a female elf. Ha 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 ha. The dwarves laughed, and Keely just felt it was noisy. At the other end, Levi sat with Gandalf, Elrond, and Thorin. Elrond identified Gandalf and Thorin's sword one by one and told them their origins. Okrist, the forger, is my western relative. May it serve you. Even though he was choked by Thorin before, it was obvious that the elven lord did not hold a grudge. Even if the sword fell into the hands of the dwarf, he still sincerely wished that it could play the role of a good sword again. By the way, I see Levi also has a sword forged in the First Age. Why don't you help him take a look? Gandalf suddenly suggested. He was impressed by Levi's sword that killed countless orcs and wargs. Oh, this one, Lord Elrond has already helped me take a look at it when I came last time. Having said that, Levi still took out the sword. Elrond nodded and took the sword again, but this time he looked at it very carefully. I can conclude that the craftsmanship of this sword is no less than the other two. And I don't know if it's my illusion, it seems to be sharper, and Elrond picked up the sword and looked at it carefully, only to see a little imperceptible glimmer on it. It has some kind of magic attached to it, and it's a bit hot. It feels different to me than last time. After being baptized by fire and blood on the battlefield, this sword seems to be much brighter. Looking at the increasingly sharp edge of the sword, which has already begun to take on a magical quality, Elrond felt a little dazed for a moment. Maybe, in the near future, you should give a name. Name? Levi took the sword and was a little embarrassed for a moment. The naming difficulty came back. Sitting next to him, watching Elrond carefully identifying everyone's weapons, Bilbo quietly pulled out his dagger under the table, thinking that this might also be a famous sword. Seeing this little action, Balin said, "No need to ask, brother. I think yours is probably not even a sword. It's more like a letter opener." Hearing this, Bilbo lowered his head, not knowing what he was thinking. A light dinner party was over quickly. In addition to the good wine, the dwarves only have one comment on the dishes here. Not as good as Levi's dry food. Levi certainly knew that the elves had meat to eat, and he treated him with meat when he came last time. However, no matter how good-tempered the elves of Rivendell were, no matter how indifferent and tolerant they were, they could not say nothing after their lord was scolded. That would be cowardice. This vegetarian feast was a subtle little revenge for the dwarves' foul mouth. At night, under the starlight, Elrond interpreted the secret code on the map for Thorin and Gandalf. Bilbo was fascinated by the scenery in front of Fence. Levi was at the manger, explaining to the elves in charge of maintaining the horses that they did not need to feed them hay, while asking where Agra was. Agra was the elf who had warmly entertained Levi before. Levi had asked him to visit the roadside fort, but from an elves' time concept, he might think that Levi had just left not long ago, so he was not in a hurry to visit. Since they are here again, we should give them some gifts. Everyone in the valley was busy with their own affairs. On the other side, Lonely Land, Wind and Cloud Peak. The escaped orc leader walked up, tremblingly, and reported to a pale-skinned strong orc. "Those dwarves? Lord, we lost them, and the elf scum attacked us. Don't make excuses for me." Azog turned around slowly, and his tall stature allowed him to look down at the leader. "I want the life of the Dwarf King. We are outnumbered and have no way to deal with it. Moreover, there's a terrifying guy here. I finally escaped back," the leader explained weakly. Azog grabbed his neck and slowly lifted it up, roaring louder and louder. "In fact, you might as well die there." Click. Azog exerted force with his right hand, and the leader's head tilted, and he was motionless on the spot, and his body was thrown aside to feed the wolf. "The dwarves will appear sooner or later. Let the word go out that a bounty is on their heads." The orcs let out strange cries and rode on their wolves to continue searching for traces of the dwarves. However, before setting off, a scout came to report timidly, "My lord, we found a fortified city in the wilderness to the east. It's big and quiet." Azog's fierce expression froze on his face. He clenched his remaining fist, took a deep breath, and angrily ordered, "Go around it." "Yes, my lord." He knew who the owner of that place was. A long time ago, 2 orcs escaped from the city wall and brought the fear of the wayside castle back to the Misty Mountains. For a long time, no orc dared to approach that area. Until the incident in the Anduin Valley happened later, the orcs' hatred for that man was engraved in their bones. That hatred was so deep that it even evolved into fear. Early in the morning, Bilbo wandered aimlessly between the balcony fences, strolling around and admiring the scenery here, where the elves live. Just as Gandalf said when he was a child, in order to find the legendary elves, Bilbo ran a long way alone, all the way to the forest, and when he came back in the middle of the night, his feet were full of leaves and gravel. The heart of adventure had already sprouted for the first time at that time. Now that he really saw the elves, it can be regarded as the fulfillment of his childhood wish. While walking and sighing, suddenly a broken sword came into view, making the hobbit curiously tiptoe to look up. Opposite the sword is a beautiful mural, engraved with a character wearing hideous black armor, a terrible helmet, and holding a black mace. The most eye-catching thing is the ring on the man's hand, and the touch of gold is particularly conspicuous in this mural. Well, it feels a bit like Levi, but it looks more fierce than Levi. Bilbo gave his own evaluation. "I feel that it is not as good as Levi armor." After leaving the mural, Bilbo put these things behind him in a blink of an eye and continued to stand on a balcony somewhere, admiring the beautiful scenery. Click! Light footsteps came from behind, and along with it came Elrond's calm and reassuring voice. "Not with your companions? No, they won't miss me. In fact, they all think I shouldn't embark on this journey." "Really?" Elrond looked at the hobbit and said, "I heard that hobbits are very adaptable to the environment." "Really?" "Yeah. I also heard that they especially like the comfortable environment at home." Bilbo looked at the Lord, thought for a while, and said, "I heard that it is not wise to seek the advice of elves." Their answers are both yes and no. Hearing Bilbo's words, Elrond was silent. This is a text trap. The only answer left for Elrond to answer this sentence is yes or no. But if he really answers yes or no, it just confirms what Bilbo said. After thinking seriously for a few seconds, Elrond suddenly realized that this was a joke. But what he was going to say next was not a joke. "We welcome you to stay here if you have the will." As the most powerful lord of Rivendell, Elrond, like the wizards, could vaguely perceive some future trends. This hobbit will suffer a lot of suffering in the future that he should not suffer because of his bravery, kindness, and compassion. And the suffering he endured will play a big role in the safety of this world. After saying this, Elrond turned and left, leaving the tranquility of the early morning to Bilbo. "My lord, our cook is overwhelmed and the wine is almost gone. How long do you think they will stay?" At this moment, 2 weeks have passed since the dwarves arrived in Rivendell. The elves who were responsible for receiving the dwarves were all busy. After Linder counted the supplies, he hurried to Elrond for help. "Host them first, and we'll talk about the supplies later." It must be said that this elven lord is really generous, and he can tolerate his territory being destroyed like this. As the saying goes, out of sight, out of mind, but as the Lord was walking, he met a group of dwarves bathing in their clear fountain. Elrond took a deep breath, wondering if he should put up a no bathing sign next to the fountain in the future. He has lived for thousands of years, and he has never seen such a scene. Compared to these dwarves, Levi is much more polite. Returning to his residence, Elrond sighed, took out a golden apple from his arms, and looked at it carefully. This is a gift from Levi to him. Not to mention the craftsmanship of the golden apple and the preciousness of the material itself, from the vitality contained in it. It is undoubtedly a treasure, and it is a treasure that is both beautiful and life-saving. It is quite valuable, so much so that Elrond couldn't think of what gift to return for a while. This golden apple directly increased the reputation of Rivendell by 30 points. However, before that, on the first day of arriving at Rivendell, Levi first visited Agra. After more than half a year, this elf was still the same, living an unchanging life. The passage of time was quite slow for the elves to perceive, so that the first sentence Agra said when he saw Levi again was, "Hey, you're back." He even thought that Levi just went out for a while. "Ah, yes, I am back." Levi chose to obey. "I heard that you did a lot of things in the Anduin Valley on the east side of the Misty Mountains during your trip. Many elves are curious about the human who can scare the orcs in a short time, but when they discuss the rumors, I can say that I know him." "Oh, this." Levi felt a little embarrassed. The elf spoke so nicely. "Oh, by the way, I came to you for something." Levi took out a golden apple and handed it to Agra solemnly. "To thank you for your hospitality, I brought a little gift. I hope you like it. I believe it can help you in some critical moments." "This?" Agra looked at the golden apple and shook his head. "It's too expensive. I just did what I should do. It's not necessary. Sometimes I'm really troubled by your excessive reserve," Levi said, forcibly stuffing the apple in his hand. "This can be used as a witness to our friendship." "Friendship?" Agra rubbed the golden apple in his hand. Although elves generally like silver products that look like starlight, they will not refuse some exquisite crafts. It can be seen that Agra really likes this golden apple. "If I were a female elf, I might have to stage an elf-human love story with you." Puff! Levi almost choked on his saliva. No, no, no. No. Or you should return the golden apple to me." "Ha. Just kidding. But this gift is indeed quite expensive. If you encounter any trouble in the future, please don't keep silent. I will remember this gift." I don't know if it's an illusion. As Agra said this, there seemed to be a hint of sadness in his words. Elves and humans. Yes. Levi couldn't help but sigh. The lifespan of elves is infinite, and they can live forever as long as nothing unexpected happens. But the lifespan of humans is only 100 years at most. All friendships with short-lived species will eventually turn into sad memories. Feelings are heavy for them, so some elves die of sadness, and their lives wither with feelings. However, although the lifespan of humans is only 100 years normally, it is not certain for Levi. It's just that all speculations need time to be verified. "Hey, don't think too much. Everything is good now, isn't it?" Levi said this. In any case, judging from the results, the golden apple is indeed still on the aesthetic line of the elves, and it is more suitable to be given as a gift to the elves. It's pretty good. Let's talk about the night 2 weeks later. At this moment, the dwarves are having a bonfire party, eating all kinds of barbecue and grilled vegetables brought from Levi's territory, making a mess. It is actually quite rare to have such a small, lively place in this deserted valley, which adds a touch of fireworks to the valley. In the guest room arranged by the elves, Levi was about to lie down and take a nap when he was pulled up by old Gandalf to go out for a walk. Levi was not asleep either, and they walked in the courtyard together. Of course, the wizard would not visit without a purpose. Soon, Elrond also joined in and walked around with the two. As they walked, Elrond mentioned the dragon and blamed Gandalf for hiding it from him. "In fact, I called you out today to talk about this matter. You have to believe me. I know what I'm doing," Gandalf explained quickly. But it is obvious that Elrond and he have some different opinions on this matter. Although both of them could vaguely sense some possibilities in the future, it was not certain that they were the same possibilities. The possibilities in the future were always good and bad. Do you really know? The dragon has been sleeping for 60 years. What if your plan fails? What if the dragon is awakened? What if it succeeds? If the dwarves can take back the Lonely Mountain? Gandalf once again expressed his concerns about the strategy of the Lonely Mountain, explaining the benefits of helping the dwarves take back the Lonely Mountain. This move is very dangerous, Gandalf. It's just as dangerous to sit and wait for death. Gandalf retorted, and we have a guarantee. When a most critical moment comes, Levi and I will find a way. Gandalf suddenly stopped and looked at Levi with Elrond. He's right. Levi chose to obey and not argue with the old man. But the scene that should be supported still needs to be supported. I have no objection. Levi is indeed very strong. I can feel that even in the prosperous period of the First Age, he would be a powerful warrior. But facing that evil dragon, no one dares to say that he is 100% sure. Elrond shook his head. The elves have been weak for too long. If an accident really happened and the evil dragon flew out, they could deal with it, but they would have to pay a heavy price. This would make the situation of the already declining elves even worse, and even lead to collapse. Oh, come on. It's Thorin's right to inherit Erebor. What are you afraid of? Elrond still disagreed. Have you forgotten? There is madness hidden in their blood. Once they see the treasure in the Lonely Mountain, the madness will be lured out. His grandfather was defeated by madness, and so was his father. Can you guarantee that Thorin Oakenshield will not follow in their footsteps? Gandalf, the decision you make will not only affect us, but the pattern of Middle-earth is not something you and I could decide. Hearing this, Gandalf shook his head and cut off the topic directly, saying, Anyway, no matter what happens to us, the dwarves will go to the Lonely Mountain. They have made up their minds, and no one can stop them. And Thorin doesn't think he should be responsible to anyone, and I am the same. Elrond said a little helplessly, You should respond to someone else instead of me. The three suddenly stopped in front of a staircase. On the high platform, an elf with a soft glow turned around and looked down. Levi and her eyes met for a moment, and he was a little dazed for a moment. Beautiful, dignified, and elegant. These words are really suitable for this lady. This is the wife of the Lord of the Golden Forest, one of the most powerful elves in Middle-earth. Lady Galadriel, Mithrandir. Gandalf bowed solemnly and said, Time may have changed me, but it can't change the Lady of Lorien. I didn't even know that Lord Elrond invited you. Gandalf smiled and glanced at Elrond, as if to say, Why didn't you tell me about this earlier? He didn't. Suddenly, a harsh voice came from behind. It was me who invited the lady. Upon hearing this voice, the smile on Gandalf's face immediately shrank back, took a deep breath, turned around, and bowed slightly reluctantly. Saruman, you've been busy recently, Gandalf. Saruman stared at him for a while, then looked away and glanced at Levi. Why is there an ordinary person here? It's getting late. If it's not necessary, let him go back and rest. Our meeting is not for ordinary people to listen in. This is to drive Levi away first and then talk about things. No. Levi is not an ordinary person. Gandalf immediately refuted. A considerable part of our plan may depend on Levi to proceed smoothly. His power is far beyond your imagination and can even overturn many situations. Really? That's not necessarily true. Of course, when Saruman first met Levi, he had a vague premonition in his heart that this human was indeed extraordinary. But he still chose to argue with Gandalf for no other reason, just to say a few more words to Gandalf. This is the enemy of the orcs in the Misty Mountains, Levi. At the critical moment, it was Elrond who stood up and spoke for Levi. Enemy of the orcs. The advancement of the title Occasion Killer, as early as when the oaks in the Misty Mountains were killed by Levi and began to shrink their defenses, this title replaced the Orc Killer and has been lying in the title library. It could be said that several people present knew what Levi did as long as they wanted to see it. The words have already shown that it would be wrong to be stubborn at this time. Okay, then I will allow him to take the seat. Saruman agreed, reluctantly. Mrs. Galadriel also nodded slightly at Levi, smiling and inviting him to join her. Levi imitated Gandalf and greeted him. The little episode passed. The Lady of the Golden Forest, the Lord of Rivendell, the white-robed wizard of Isengard, the gray-robed wizard traveling in Middle-earth, and Levi. In this way, the 5 people held an impromptu buy-down meeting. The dragon does not belong to any party, but if it falls to the enemy, it will be a terrible disaster for Middle-earth. The enemy? What kind of enemy? Saruman rejected Gandalf's words on the spot. The enemy has been defeated long ago, and the ring has been washed into the sea. Your worries have no basis at all. Levi, who was standing by the stone pillar, glanced at Saruman and half-smiled, but after thinking about it, he didn't say anything. At this time, Saruman was simply arrogant, jealous, and looked down upon Gandalf. He was still on the side of the free people and could be counted as an ally. Gandalf, our 400 years of peace have been hard-won. There's no need to take risks anymore. Elrond, who had always sought stability, agreed with Saruman's opinion at this time. Peace? Is it really peace? The trolls have come down from the mountains and started to plunder nearby farmers and pastures. Orcs are attacking us on the road. Ask Levi how many orcs he can kill on a long trip. You know how chaotic it is now. But this is not a sign of an imminent war. Elrond commented. Saruman also quickly chided. You always like to make trouble for nothing. No, it's not just smog. There is something more evil that is affecting the situation in Middle-earth. We can turn a blind eye to him, but he will not ignore us. Gandalf spoke of his concerns. As he spoke, Levi discovered that Lady Galadriel and Elrond had stood beside him at some point, that is, behind Gandalf. This means that they, like themselves, actually support Gandalf's statement. There were 4 people at a table on the left, with only Saruman sitting alone on the right. Saruman's face froze when he saw that everyone except him actually ran to support Gandalf. There is a necromancer entrenched in Dol Guldur. He has the power to summon the undead. Gandalf talked about what the brown robe had brought back and persuaded everyone to attack Dol Guldur. This necromancer is, at best, just an ordinary person who has learned some black magic. It's nothing to worry about. Saruman still objected and kept talking. After listening for a while, Gandalf suddenly became unresponsive and seemed to be in a daze. Are you listening to me? Look at him. It's like I'm talking to myself. Of course, he wasn't listening to you. Levi changed his position and leaned against the stone pillar more comfortably. The holders of the 3 elven rings can communicate with each other through telepathy. This Lady Galadriel must have discovered the Morgul's sword on Gandalf and was confirming it with Gandalf. Sure enough, after a while, Gandalf took out the sword and placed it on the stone table. This kind of sword is the standard equipment of the Nazgul. Sword of Morgul, attack +7. Special effect, wither. Those injured by the sword of Morgul will be slowly dragged into darkness, and their lives will gradually wither. This injury cannot be cured by ordinary means, and requires magic or some secret healing methods to relieve it. This thing is a special attack on free people, and is not very useful against dark creatures. No way, absolutely impossible. It's just a coincidence. Even with the irrefutable evidence right in front of him, Saruman still maintained his conservative style. Let's figure it out. He resumed his tirade. However, little did he know that when he said these words, the dwarves had already packed up and left. This was obviously Gandalf's intention. He dragged Saruman here so that the dwarves could have time to go on their way and at the same time force him to do so. Make a choice. Sure enough, after a while, Linder came over to report the news. Lord Elrond, those dwarves have left. As he spoke, this guy could hardly hold his mouth shut. Thanks to Vera, they are gone. As the dwarves left, the meeting ended. The final conclusion is, help the dwarves, attack Dol Guldur, and find out the intelligence. However, when everything was finalized and everyone was about to leave, Mrs. Galadriel suddenly stopped Levi and walked towards him slowly. Lady Galadriel. Levi nodded in greeting, really not knowing what the Lady of the Golden Forest Lord wanted to talk to him about. As Galadriel gradually approached, Levi could feel a trace of sacred light seeping out from this lady, as if to purify him. Levi unconsciously raised his head and looked at her. If I remember correctly, this lady's ability to see the future is much stronger than that of wizards and other elf lords. She can see farther and more in detail. The moment Levi raised his head, subconsciously, Galadriel tried to see something through his eyes. However, when she really tried to do so, she was suddenly stunned. Can't see anything? Your future is full of uncertainty. After a silence, Galadriel said so. Levi didn't know whether this was a compliment or something else, and didn't speak for a while. However, although he couldn't see the deep future, he could still perceive some possibilities about Levi in the near future, especially since this possibility was intertwined with the fate of other people, which could be deduced from the side. Many things in this expedition may have led to bad things, but with your participation, maybe those things can be corrected. I wish you a safe journey, Adventurer Levi. After this matter is over, you are welcome to visit Lothlorien. At this moment, Galadriel was quite curious about Levi's blank future. This was the first time he had seen such a situation in his life. When he arrived at the Golden Forest, he could try to reveal it with a water mirror. Thank you for your blessing, I will. Galadriel smiled and nodded. Levi felt a little dazed, and when he came to his senses, the holy figure had disappeared. Levi! Suddenly, someone called from the bottom of the stairs. Turning around, I saw an old man in a gray robe walking up quickly and said anxiously, "We have to set off quickly. Thorin and his men have gone a long way. It will take a while to catch up with them. I heard from the elves that they went along the high pass. I don't know if the orcs there will come back in a few months. If they are ambushed, it will be bad. Although the orcs in the high pass have been plowed by Levi, no one can say whether it will be occupied again after Levi left. High pass. That's really... I hope they are okay." Levi turned around and was about to get the horse. "Oh, wait. I suggest you leave the horse to the elf for the time being. After all, the road we're going to take next is not so smooth. Not only do you have to walk through steep and narrow mountain roads, you may also have to pass through dark and crowded caves. These places are indeed not suitable for carrying mounts. Okay, let's stay here for the time being. Let's go." As Levi and Gandalf rushed forward along the route the dwarves had taken. On Thorin's side, the group finally escaped from the rock giant's play area, and they were all very tired at this moment. The thunderstorm in the sky continued, and the expedition team urgently needed to rest. "Hey, I found a cave entrance. Everyone come." At this time, Philly and Keely, who were exploring the way ahead, suddenly called everyone and walked toward the cave that looked relatively flat. "We will rest here tonight, don't make a fire, and set off at dawn." Thorin gave the order. "No, Thorin, according to the original plan, we should wait for Gandalf and Levi to arrive before setting off." Balin reminded. "Plans always change." It was late at night. The dwarves were already very tired, snoring all over the place, and even Beaufort, who was on guard, couldn't stop kowtowing. Bilbo suddenly opened his eyes, looked at the sleeping dwarves, packed up his things, and picked up the hiking stick he picked up. "Where are you going?" Seeing Bilbo was leaving, Beaufort was no longer sleepy. "Go back to Rivendell." No, you can't leave. You're already a member of our expedition, a part of us." The two talked without noticing that the snoring around them had stopped. "No, I'm not. Just like Thorin said, I shouldn't have come here. He's right. I shouldn't have run away from home in a fit of rage." "Bilbo, I understand you. You just miss home," Beaufort whispered. "You don't understand. You don't understand. You are dwarves. You spend your life on the road. You never take root anywhere. You don't have any belonging." Beaufort listened to Bilbo's words in silence, his eyes full of sadness and heaviness. I'm sorry. That's not what I meant," Bilbo said hurriedly. He almost forgot that these dwarves went on a journey and suffered so much just to take back their homes. "No, you're right, Bilbo." Although he was touched, Beaufort did not blame Bilbo. The dwarves had shown a high tolerance for the thief from the beginning. Except for Thorin's harsh words, they'd been taking care of him all the way. If an elf had said that, Beaufort would have picked up his weapon and fought him. But in front of him was Bilbo, a hobbit with his own warm home. May all the good luck in the world be with you. I mean it, Bilbo. Beaufort patted Bilbo's shoulder, indicating that he didn't need to feel guilty. Wait, what is that? As he was talking, Beaufort discovered that the dagger on Bilbo's waist began to emit a pale blue glow, which was extremely conspicuous in the dark cave. It must be said that the dwarves are good at causing trouble. Every time they look for a place to rest, they can always accurately find the most dangerous place. This cave that looks very flat is called Vancouver Door. Just as its name suggests, it is the anteroom of the orc town. The orcs living in the orc town are a variant of the orc tribe. They are smaller and weaker than ordinary orcs, but they are also more cunning and flexible. In fact, compared with the brutal and warlike orcs outside, there's another name that suits them better: goblin. Wake up, be alert. Thorin, who pretended to be asleep, jumped up and shouted. But it was too late. Bang! The ground of the anteroom door suddenly collapsed, revealing a passage, and a group of people fell down at once, sliding in the passage with bumps and bumps. Plop! As soon as he landed, a large group of goblins swarmed over him. There were so many that they were so dense that there was no end in sight, and they drowned everyone in an instant. Even though the dwarves fought desperately, they could not break through. Soon, a group of dwarves were captured and sent to somewhere in the center of the town. Only Bilbo was left squatting there with his head in his hands, at a loss. Bilbo was too short, even smaller than the goblins, and the color of his clothes happened to be similar to the environment in the cave. In addition, the hobbits had a unique talent for hiding that blended into the environment, so that from the moment he came in, no goblin noticed him. However, when a large army passed by and Bilbo stood up, a lone goblin still found him and attacked him with a strange cry. During the fight, Bilbo accidentally fell into a deep pit in the valley and rolled all the way down. Disappeared. I never thought there would be such creatures in Middle-earth. At the other end, in front of the mountain range, Levi looked up at a group of rock giants who were throwing boulders at each other and playing, and were taller than the mountain, with eyes full of amazement. Rock giants 80,000/80,000. I think they are much more dangerous than a mere dragon. Gandalf, who had just climbed up from behind, also raised his head and took a breath and said, "From a strength perspective, it is true. But don't worry, these rock giants are not very intelligent and have no interest in the structure of Middle-earth. Neither Sauron nor Morgoth, the great enemy of the past, could drive them to do anything. They are absolutely neutral creatures. Don't worry about them. We just need to keep moving forward. They should be waiting for us." Gandalf said this at the pass of the Misty Mountains. "That's part of our plan." "That's possible." Levi looked around at the terrain. This place was still the same as the last time he came here, with no changes. Well, even if they really didn't wait for us, they would definitely find a place to rest after it rained so heavily. We can always catch up while they rest. Gandalf suddenly stopped and looked at a cave beside him. This is the front hall of the orc town. It is a gate specially set up by the orcs to attack passers-by. Because of their presence, this road has been in use for a long time. Speaking of which, I once planned to find a somewhat upright rock giant to block this place, but they were really difficult to communicate with, so in the end it didn't work out. The well-informed old wizard told the history of this place. As he spoke, he took a few steps forward, squatted down, and touched the ground. The mechanism here shows signs of being triggered just now. No, Thorin and the others should have been caught. This is not good. Then let's go down and rescue them. Levi also took 2 steps forward, looked left and right, knocked on the wall, and touched the ground. No need to waste your efforts. These goblins in Orc Town are very smart. The gates they set up cannot be opened from the outside. Gandalf stood up and said, "But I know there's a back door through which we could sneak in. Maybe we can dig in." Levi took out a diamond pickaxe and asked Gandalf, "Show me the direction. Just watch. I won't call him Levi until he digs through the front hall door." Hiss! Gandalf stroked his beard and took a deep breath. I almost forgot what this guy is capable of. This way, dong 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 dong. The diamond pickaxe left an afterimage in Levi's hand, and a neat rectangular passage 2 meters high continued to extend underground at an extremely fast speed. Levi dug in front, while Gandalf held a torch in the back to act as a light source. Wait a moment. After digging for a while, Gandalf suddenly called out to ask Levi to stop. We should be very close. Let me take a look inside first. He took out his cane and knocked it on the ground. A transparent ring of light burst out from his body, ignoring all obstacles on the road, and continued to expand and extend. The halo of light crossed over the rock formations, across all kinds of debris, and covered a large group of goblins in the cave. However, they were not aware of it and were still doing their own thing. Rarely, Gandalf cast a range detection spell. Before entering Middle-earth, wizards were subject to many restrictions. One of them was that their divine power could not be revealed too much in front of mortals. This resulted in Gandalf often having to use swords and clubs to solve problems. But in front of Levi, this restriction seemed to be relaxed a lot. Of course, he is just relaxing a little. If he really liberates them all, he might be able to cut off the entire mountain. You must know that in the unrestricted War of Wrath in the ancient era, an entire continent was sunk. Right over here, I see them. Gandalf pointed in the direction and said, dig 50 meters this way and then down. Dong, 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 dong. Levi continued to swing the pickaxe, knocking off the rocks one by one, and soon he arrived at the place Gandalf said. Snap! Another stone was dug out, and a burst of light emerged from below. The Orc town center has arrived. Levi poked half of his head out and saw a fat figure sitting on a flat stone, interrogating the 13 dwarves who were surrounded. On the ground were their confiscated weapons. After collecting the weapons, the goblins continued to search, and soon found a pile of silver tableware and candlesticks engraved with Made in Rivendell in small letters. Originally produced in the Second Age of Rivendell, no trash can be given away. The Orc King conveniently threw these antiques, which were at least 3,000 years old, aside. They really didn't like the elves' things. As for why these things were found, it was a souvenir taken away from Rivendell by some dwarves. Obviously, his automatic picking function is better than Levi's, and he can pick it up without knocking it down. Hey, look who I found. Isn't this Thorin Oakenshield? After checking the trophies, the Orc King suddenly saw Thorin among the dwarves, and his big face suddenly burst into laughter. I know that your head is valuable, whether it's alive or dead. Go tell Azog that the Dwarf King was captured by me, and ask him to come with a reward. A goblin is sent out to deliver the message. Just when the Orc King was about to continue to attack these dwarves, a goblin picked up a sword collected from the ground next to him, pulled it out, and took a look. Dash! As soon as he pulled it out, he was startled and quickly threw the sword aside. The Orc King glanced at the ground and was suddenly frightened. He stepped back and even accidentally trampled to death a man behind him. Just a relatively skinny goblin. It's the biting sword that wiped the necks of thousands of orcs, he shouted. Wow! The surrounding goblins suddenly moved away and exited the circle. No one was willing to get closer to the sword. Even though the original owner has been dead for many years, the sword still retains its power. You damned fellows! The Orc King was strangely angry. Punish them. Whip them to death. I'm going to peel off their skin and cut off their heads. Snap! Some goblins raised their whips and whipped the dwarves. Some threw the dwarves to the ground and beat them with fists and feet, and some raised their bone blades to kill them. It's time for us to go. Seeing the dwarves in danger, Gandalf immediately jumped down first. At this height, even Levi, who had the fall protection enchantment, had to think twice. This old man is good. He jumped as soon as he said. Levi ate a golden apple in advance. Then I will. Boom! Before Levi jumped down, a dazzling white light suddenly burst out of the cave, and a strong airflow exploded outward with Gandalf as the center. The debris under his feet flew far away in an instant, and a large group of goblins around him flew out uncontrollably like a typhoon and fell into the deep valley. Even the Orc King, who was farther away, was affected. His sturdy chair, made of metal and wood, was blown away by the huge impact force, and his fat body rolled to the ground, screaming in pain. Boom! The white light dissipated. At this moment, there was no one standing here except Gandalf. The goblins who were close had long disappeared, and those who were far away were all crawling on the ground to avoid the storm. Even the Orc King, who was so heavy, had to lie on the ground. Thorin opened his eyes. Gandalf! The wizard drew out his long sword, and the ring of fire on his hand glowed faintly. Pick up your weapons and fight. The fire of hope in their hearts was ignited, and the dwarves pushed away the nearby goblins. Each took back their weapons and followed Gandalf to kill. That's the enemy fencing sword. The Orc King recognized the sword in Gandalf's hand. It must be said that as the king of goblins and one of the leaders of the orcs in the Misty Mountains, he is indeed knowledgeable. Gandalf knew all the swords that he didn't recognize. It was hard to say which of them had existed in Middle-earth longer, but in fact, the lifespan of orcs seemed to be quite long. Even Asa was at least 200 years old now. After recovering, the Orc King immediately raised his skull scepter in anger and commanded the goblins to chase forward. After the first attack, perhaps because there were too many people present, or perhaps because of some other reason, Gandalf could no longer cast the powerful spell he had before. He just pulled out Glamdring and led the dwarves to break out. A group of goblins followed closely behind. After the initial shock, they immediately reacted and surrounded them in an overwhelming manner. For a while, there was a lot of noise, and there were enemies everywhere. No matter how powerful you are, thousands of goblins. Can't you beat 14 of you? The group soon fell into a disadvantage. However, at this moment, a nightmare-like black figure fell from the sky, and the long sword slashed forward, creating a small vacuum zone. The Orc King took another step back. It's him, the vicious human, the enemy of orcs. Levi swung a sword casually, and the long sword passed through the goblin's neck. The goblin blocking the way in front of him froze in place, his eyes darting around, and for some reason his body suddenly became uncontrollable. Levi raised his hand and gently patted the goblin's head. Snap! A head fell to the ground. This sword is a bit too sharp. Many times it can cause more than 12 points of damage. That's just a minimum number. Generally, when the enemy has little armor, they are directly cut in half and killed instantly. At the narrow entrance, Levi was alone here, and every sword would sweep away a group of goblins. Those goblins that were swept away seemed to be thrown like fire bombs, knocking down another group of those who squeezed in from behind. This is the power of the sweeping blade. Every attack will directly cover a range and hit as many as you can. Levi began to want to try to add the knockback enchantment. This enchantment may not be as useless as in the game. Behind Levi, the dwarves ran forward and couldn't help looking back. At this moment, there was not a single goblin between Levi and them, and a buffer zone was cut directly. Don't look, hurry up now, Gandalf urged, although he couldn't help looking a few times. The Orc King was surrounded by the goblins, closely guarding behind him, staring at the sword in Levi's hand. He didn't know the sword that made him feel cold in his heart. He had never seen it before, nor had he heard of it. But from now on, Levi made him know it. Stroking the sword flashing with cold light in his hand, looking at the group of goblins in front of him who hesitated and dared not move forward, Levi said the words again. Come, try to get past me. The black armor, the aura of one person sweeping across thousands of armies, and the arrogant mentality that was inadvertently revealed. All these things reminded the Orc King of one person, a being who dominated all orcs and wargs. The black shadow gradually overlapped with the figure in front of him. No, it can't be that one. Although he is also very good at fighting, he is still far behind. That one can not only fight. Don't waste time with him here. Go another way. The well-informed Orc King left with a large group of Orcwu. No, I really won't come. Come back, Levi shouted as he chased after him. Now, in the cave, Levi chased and killed a group of goblins. On the other side, a group of goblins chased the dwarves and Gandalf. The Orc King was caught in the middle, running sweating profusely, avoiding the fierce man behind him, and giving orders to the goblins in front to attack the dwarves. For a while, all kinds of noises could be heard. At the same time, the fight in the Orc town was in full swing. In that unknown and secluded valley bottom, Bilbo had just woken up from a coma. As soon as he woke up, he heard a hoarse voice not far away. The voice was talking to itself and telling what it was doing. Goblin, the meat is very thin and thin. You have to peel off the skin before you can eat it. It's better than nothing. Thanks to the halfling's unique talent for concealment, Bilbo was not discovered even when he was unconscious. At this moment, he was hiding behind a stone, quietly observing the thin, strange creature that was hitting the goblin on the head with a stone. The goblin ultimately failed to escape the fate of being crushed to death. As the unfortunate goblin was crushed to death, a golden ring fell off the strange creature and rolled all the way to Bilbo's feet. Picked up by this hobbit. What's this? Bilbo looked at the ring curiously and thought it was quite beautiful. Gulu. However, his attention was soon distracted. He looked at the strange creature that was dealing with the goblin with vigilance and stuffed the ring into his pocket. Looking at this cruel scene, Bilbo took a deep breath, feeling that this place was really weird. He turned his head, took a deep breath to calm down, and when he stuck his head out again, he found that the thin creature suddenly disappeared. Bilbo felt alarmed and raised his head sharply. A pair of big eyes were staring at him. Wow, bless you, baby. He looks very fat. He has eaten a lot of meat now. Just when the thin creature showed a cruel smile and was about to attack Bilbo, Bilbo suddenly drew out his dagger and pressed it against his neck. Stand back. Stay away from me. Gulu, the sword of the elves, but you are not an elf, nor an orc. What are you, Gulu? I am Bilbo Baggins. Baggins, what is Baggins? I am a hobbit from the Shire. Oh, hobbit, we have eaten bats and fish, but we haven't eaten hobbit yet. Gollum, is he fresh and tender? Get away. Bilbo waved his dagger and forced back the guy who wanted to eat his flesh. Listen, I don't want to complicate things. Just tell me the way out, and we can go our separate ways. This is not playing any game with you. Game? We like games. Guru, why don't you play a few guessing games with us? If you win, I will tell you how to get out. You? Yes, baby, us, Gollum. Bilbo looked left and then again, but he didn't see the third person. Good guy. He is still schizophrenic. This one who lives in a dark corner at the bottom of Orc Town is naturally Gulu. In this way, due to some coincidence, Bilbo and Gollum played a guessing game underground. But Gulu found the wrong opponent today. Riddles have always been Bilbo's forte. Soon, Gulu fell into a disadvantage and lost completely. However, he has never been a trustworthy master. You lost. Now it's time to take me out. Bilbo breathed a sigh of relief after winning the game. I lost. No, we didn't lose, Gulu. Gollum stared at Bilbo's sword with fear. His expression became fierce, and he stretched one hand to his waist, intending to take out the ring and put it on so that he could attack Bilbo invisible. However, he didn't touch anything. Where did it go? Baby, my baby, no. No, it's lost. What do you have in your pocket? Gollum looked at Bilbo fiercely. Nothing. Bilbo quietly took out the ring and put his hands behind his back. You must have stolen it. Upon discovering that the ring was missing, Gollum immediately fell into madness. He was no longer afraid of the dagger in Bilbo's hand and rushed towards him with a cry. Caught off guard, Baggins was knocked down. The ring detached from his hand, flew into the air, actively adjusted its angle and size, and fit right on Bilbo's hand when it fell. Obviously, it has had enough of Gollum and is eager to change its holder and escape from this underground abyss where the sun never shines. The moment the ring was put on, Bilbo's figure immediately disappeared and entered another dimension. He became invisible. Gollum could no longer see him and could only wail and shout. He must have gone to the exit, Gollum muttered, and walked in one direction. Exit? Without thinking about why he suddenly became invisible, Bilbo hurriedly followed. Run! In the cave on the other side, Gandalf was leading the way in front, holding a staff in his left hand and a sword in his right hand, and he was very brave. However, when he turned around, he found that there were still countless goblins chasing him from behind, and they looked quite anxious, as if they were urged by something. Why are they still chasing? It's so annoying. A dwarf complained loudly. Behind the dwarves, the Orc King kept moving his fat body forward, directing his men to surround Gandalf and others, while looking back. I saw a black figure following behind him like a ghost. While running, he also put blocks under his feet, crossing all kinds of rugged terrain that were difficult to pass. Damn it, why is he still chasing? The Orc King was really scared at this moment. Fortunately, after they kept chasing him by detours, they finally blocked the dwarves and wizards in front, and the figure was temporarily left behind, giving them time to breathe. Do you think you can outrun me? The Orc King panted and looked at Gandalf proudly. Boom! He swung his huge skull cane at Gandalf, and Gandalf tried to block it with his sword, but no matter how sharp and hard it was just a long sword, and it could not be compared with the skull cane that was like a war hammer in terms of size. With a clang sound, the sword in Gandalf's hand was shaken away, and the whole person stepped back several steps and almost fell to the ground. Seeing his opponent's weapon shaken away and surrounded by his own men, the Orc King couldn't think of how he could lose. Now let's see what you can do, wizard. He raised his heavy skull staff again, ready to give Gandalf a fatal blow. However, Gandalf knocked his staff to the ground, and the sword that was knocked to the ground in the distance actually flew up by itself, slashing the Orc King's belly and knocking him to his knees. The sword attack was successful, and the situation was reversed in an instant. In a blink of an eye, the Orc King's life fell into Gandalf's hands, and a sword was about to fall on his head. Wait, stop! Don't do it! I'll let you go, okay? The Orc King surrendered urgently, completely losing his previous smug look. No! Before Gandalf could answer, a voice that made the goblins subconsciously feel scared came from above his head. It was that man. He caught up. Above the crowd, Levi put away the stones used to build the road and drew out his long sword. Without hesitation, he leaped down and chopped down, ending the life of the Orc King.